Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, I know we've made lots of jokes before about episodes being sponsored, but this in a little bit of a way is going to be our first ever commercial for Richest Men in Town as we launch season 5. Sitting where you sit, what are you excited about to tell our listeners about for season 5?
Yeah, I'm super excited, man. It's funny because we tell people we've been in the lab, and I know people are like, you've been sitting on the couch watching Sports Center, but the reality is we've actually been doing some work, man. So I'm excited because in the spirit of March Madness, we have an ebook.
We're huge fans. We're huge fans.
We always have a bracket or 2 or 3 or 4 of them going on. And we're going to have an ebook that'll be released right around when we get to the Sweet 16, titled Sweet 16. And it's a book that's a compilation of some of the 16 lessons that you and I are kind of going to battle out to make sure they land in the book. But I'm excited about that.
So like right now, behind the scenes, we have a doc, and Tyler and I have poured through 4 seasons worth of Richest Men in Town episodes. We acknowledge the power of the story that our guest shares, and there are some amazing stories, and we are literally going to duke it out and take it down from 100 to 16 sweet stories of faith, of people living rich lives, of lessons learned, of lessons not only that our guests learn, but then they share it with us, changes our lives, impacts our listeners. Sweet 16. I love the idea too of pivoting content, right? So for 4 seasons, we've been coming at you one way. Podcast, you, me, guests. We have social media platforms, right? But we're now taking some of our content and pivoting to some of this ebook, right? And even publications like real books down the line. Kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. We have so on the docket, we've got several ebooks planned to come out over the next few months. We're excited about that our listeners will be able to download and consume that way. We've got a full book in the works as well that we're working on. But Mike, I got to tell you, one of the things I'm really psyched about this season is live events, man. And I'll let you kind of talk about that, but I'm excited about this.
Okay. Well, we have not been alone in the lab, right? We've been reaching out to some people that are doing some great work, people that we admire. And one of the things that really holds a lot of magic and power is this idea of hearing the guest voice, right? Right now, they hear us. We don't hear them. We get their texts, we get their emails, and we get their shout outs on social media, thanking us for the work that we're doing, but we want to engage with them real time. And we want to have these live events using technology, right? And using stage.
Yeah.
Right. So down the road, season 5 is where we take things up a notch and we engage real time. And it's not just you and me. Every time we end an episode, it's always like, man, that was so much fun. Let's do it again. And sometimes we do it again, but sometimes that's a promise that we just haven't been able to deliver on. Live events is going to change that. We're going to bring guests in that live interaction to allow that guest voice to be heard so that we'll actually get a real feel for the impact of this work on people.
Yeah, I'm really excited for our guests to be able to ask questions to those that are sitting with us in the studio and having these conversations. So I'm super excited about that, man. We've got, we've been saying this for a while. Things are changing in Richest Men in Town, and they have been subtly over the last 4 seasons. But we've hit this spot in season 5 with the launch of season 5 that there's some big things coming, and we're just excited to kind of let you guys have a little more interaction and a little more depth to the wonderful guests that we've had over the course of 5 seasons.
Well, we are on record in several of our episodes over the past 4 seasons of saying that it takes us a little while to learn some things, right?
I'm a hard study, man.
I'm a hard study. And so this idea, this podcast lived in our head for a decade before we even did it. Yeah. And it's true that as we come into this season 5, some of the things that we're talking about now, we have been talking about for years, and we're kind of done talking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're done talking. I know people say, yeah, you guys talk a lot. We do talk a lot, but the idea is that this season 5, we're actually going to take some of those thoughts and commit it to action. And it's really going to be that next level of, we talk about every time a guest comes on the podcast, they give us a gift. What are we doing with it?
Yeah.
And season 5 is about doing more with it.
Amen. In the words of Lester Young, we're going to 10X this bad boy, right? So
let's go.
And that's what we want to do. But the last thing I want to mention before we let people get into this next episode is that I'm sure you guys are familiar with Brian Grow. He's been a big part of the podcast as a guest. He's going to start joining us on a regular basis and being a regular contributor to Richest Men in Town. And we're really excited about what he's going to bring to the table. And I love his insights, love him like a brother, just in the interactions we've had here. So super excited about all the changes, man.
Yeah. 3 heads are better than 1, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So yeah, season 5, listeners, you're going to love it. So stay tuned for more to come. We just wanted to give you a little sneak peek as we launch this, the latest episode.
All right. Enjoy this next episode as you dive into the latest episode of the Richest Men in Town. Mike Freeman, it is Richest Men in Town night. And I'm not even sure what that means anymore. It's like we're sort of all over the place, but it is an episode of Richest Men in Town, right? And tonight I had the pleasure of being introduced to Alex and Bruce Biegel. And what a night, what a cool couple. What were your takeaways tonight after spending a couple hours with your friends, Alex and Bruce?
Deep wells, right? Scratching the surface. This is a couple of hours looking into 2 lives, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about individual. Bruce, what's your story? Alex, what's your story? Together, what's your story? And it's a remarkable journey for everyone involved, right? You've got opposites attracting. You've got divergent faith journeys, and then let's put them together in holy matrimony and see how that works or doesn't. Right?
Yeah. I thought it was great. I mean, I thought that their vulnerability tonight, their transparency tonight on what it takes to have a successful companionship, right? And as most of us know, it takes work. And they really kind of highlight some of that work and some of the struggles that went into that brought them out on the other side. And I thought that was powerful. I took a lot of notes about just things that I thought that, man, these are good points that I could apply in my own relationship when I'm looking at bumps in the road.
Yeah, no stranger. We're always talking good news of the gospel, but in this particular, in the case of the Biegels, we get application. I think at one point you say, hold up. Talk to me about applying these principles. Like, walk me through the work that you did, that you're currently doing. Again, disclaimer, they're not done.
Sure.
Right. They haven't arrived at some magical place called, bliss
right.
and paradise, but they've climbed some mountains, and they can tell you some things, and they actually give us some real practical how to unplug, how to talk to one another, how to enjoy one another's time, being intentional with the time that we have, and even if we're not, our listeners come from all kinds of different faiths, all kinds of different walks, single, married, kids at home, young kids, old kids, right? We're going to be able to get something out of this because, again, we're talking to 2 individuals who come together, and those individual stories matter.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, if anyone's listening to this podcast and they've felt like they've had some things in their life that they've had to overcome, and then they've had some things in their relationships that they've had to overcome. I think that you'll relate with Alex and Bruce because they really talk about, hey, we all bring our own stuff to these relationships. We've got to kind of get through those things, and we've got to figure out how we can make it work together. I just loved it.
Anyone ever been on the brink of quitting something?
Yeah.
Right. We get into that. Anybody go to church and ask, why are you there?
Yeah.
I loved that conversation that we had.
I did too.
I thought that was a cool tangent. And here's the thing, like couple hours, like, come on back.
Yeah.
We're not done.
No, I felt like we were at a Thanksgiving feast and I had some cranberries tonight. You know what I mean? Like,
hold that souffle. Well, you're not gonna have souffle at your house, are you? Sweet potatoes?
No, I don't think so, man. We may be having pizza coming back from where we're
there. We go.
But it was great tonight, Mike.
Great night.
I appreciate you introducing me to Alex and Bruce. I appreciate Alex and Bruce for their vulnerability, their willingness to cover some difficult things tonight, and I appreciate the richest men in town community and the people that we get to surround ourselves with that push me to be a better person. So to those of you, community and connection, Bruce talks about that tonight. So for those of you that are looking to connect and find a way that you can improve where you're at, take a few minutes, take a couple hours even, and listen to Alex and Bruce on tonight's episode of The Richest Men in Town.
Have I gotten from you the protocol for when the wife comes home from a manicure and you don't like the color?
Oh no,
have we broke this down?
No, I've never experienced this.
So I went through something, and let me tell you, brother.
Yeah,
it was a long 4 to 6 weeks or something.
Like, wait, like what? Like you didn't like
bit my tongue,
color?
Bit my tongue. Oh. Didn't like the color.
I mean, what color was it?
Butter.
So I'm Danish, so I do like butter.
I know, but like every time you saw the tips of your wife's fingers is like she just dipped her fingers in the butter. You know what I mean?
Are we talking like real butter? Or are we talking like margarine? Like where are we at?
Probably margarine, even worse.
Yeah.
It's probably margarine. I can't believe it's not butter. So you've been at this marriage game for a little bit. Like, walk me through how to do that, because there's a couple of things that I'm known to botch things. Like the time I tried to surprise Kelly with the pedicure, and I went into the shower and told her you'll shave your legs today. I demanded.
Wow. So let me ask this question real quick. If let's go through a scenario. All right.
Okay.
Let's say you and Kelly are getting ready to go out to dinner. It's Friday night. Come home from work. Kelly's home. Go. She's like, let's go.
Is there a better feeling in the world?
No, it's great. The weekend's here. You're getting ready to go with the person you love the most. Go have some dinner.
It's a great feeling.
She comes walking out of the bedroom, and she's wearing something that you're not loving, right? It's not your favorite fit that she's got in the closet. My question to you is, how do you handle this particular scenario?
The misfit, if you will.
It is a misfit, yes.
Okay, A, I'm married to Kelly Freeman. And B, I'm Mike 100%. Freeman, right?
Okay.
So that would not go well. And I don't like conflict. So therefore, we roll.
Okay. So no comment, no question.
All going right, with the company, right? Going with the I know what I got here.
Yeah. Okay. So Scenario 2 is she comes out in the misfit and she says, "Hey, what do you think?"
Ooh.
Direct question. Direct question.
Asking.
Yeah, direct question.
Okay, so there's no. Okay, so I gotta go, but I probably poke some. Make it like a natural thing. I'd probably go something like, "Oh man, Kelly, I was hoping you would rock that."
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And hopefully I've got a couple favorites, right? And it'd be
okay.
Oh yeah, right. No, that works. That works. I kind of had my mind set on that thing, you know?
So let's circle back to the Butterfingers, right? We got the Misfit, we got the Butterfingers. She's rocking Butterfingers for the last 6 weeks or however long. Have you said one word about the Butterfingers?
We have since. This is how I played it. Okay. I didn't go to you. I didn't go to the guidebook. Sorry, man. But this is how I ended up playing those 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like 4, but for whatever reason, the butter stuck around for like a long time. And then it starts looking shabby, whatever color, right?
Butter's got staying power, man.
Yeah. So a second that she came back after the pedicure with the manicure with the new color, I praised the new color and did let her know that it's so much better than the butter that she had rocking before. So now she knows in her mind, stay away from that butter. Mike didn't like that.
All right. I mean, look,
unless at this stage, she might be like, oh, keep a note of things Mike doesn't like and therefore do it.
That's true. You are 25 almost. You're 25 years?
Coming up on it. Holy cow, I better get a plan.
Yeah.
25 sounds big.
It does sound big, but that's big, dude. It's big. All right. I think you played it perfectly, man. You played it right on. So Can I get some more life advice here? Yeah. I love giving advice that I'm bad at. So let's go.
There's a couple of situations that I am turning a blind eye to.
Okay.
There's things that I want to be, right? I want to be a leftover guy. Kelly always says, "Hey, you want me to toss this?" Oh, no. Keep that because I'm going to hit that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I don't.
No, then we store it for like 6 weeks and you're like, what was this thing?
Yeah, oh no, that's so much better the next day. Oh, I'm going to get that in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take that for lunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
None of that happens. So now I've actually, just toss it.
Okay.
But I'm on COVID. I'm on COVID house arrest, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I want to cook. I want to be domestic. I got this Blackstone griddle out in my backyard.
I got one of those myself.
This episode brought to you by the Blackstone griddle. Maybe we should do something with that, right? I watch these YouTube fools do Blackstone.
I love it.
They have like
some crazy stuff.
Yeah, they got followed. So I'm
just eating tortillas on that bad boy. That's all I do on it. But
yeah, makes a good quesadilla.
All right. So anyway, you're on the Blackstone.
So I can't go to the grocery store. I don't want to inconvenience my wife. So I'm like, I'm going to cook. What do I got? I don't know if you've ever spent time looking in your freezer. Like legit, what's in there?
No, I don't. I don't. Like, I don't go past the Eggos. Like, I see the Eggos in there and I'm like, I see other bags like trying to peek their heads out past the Eggo. And I'm like, no, there's something in there that I don't even want to know. Because
the theme of this week of Mike cooking on the Blackstone is what can I cook in the freezer? Right? So tonight the menu was breakfast burritos using that bag of hash browns that's been in there. Now, last night we lived high on the hog and we rocked some ribeyes, right?
Yeah.
Those were killer. Those were killer. The night before it was Kelly's turn to let's have some of these freezer burnt raviolis. And you know what freezer burnt does to the Eggos? Now imagine that as a ravioli.
Yeah,
it was rough.
It's funny because we did an episode long time ago, and we talked about your side yard, right? I sort of feel like the freezer is the side yard of your inside, right?
Yep.
The inside house.
Yep. What side yard is to the exterior, the freezer is to the interior.
Yeah. Like, I feel like there's things that I know, like I see it and I go, I should walk outside and throw this away. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put it in the freezer.
And my favorite is when the two worlds collide and someone's like, hey, Mike, you want me to keep this for leftovers? And I'm like, oh, you know what? let's freeze. Let's freeze that and hit it in a week or two. I don't know what we were thinking, but there's this half bag of something thrown in there. Like, oh yeah.
It's just like this discolored brick of ice, right? And somewhere in there, there's beef or there's broccoli. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, and you guys are making a trip. Hopefully, everything works out.
Let's go.
You're making a trip down here to San Diego, and now I feel the pressure. Like, I need to empty out my freezer, man. I mean, I don't want people looking in that thing.
And have you ever had that really hard up night where you want some ice cream and what you got in there is not fresh, but you're like, I'll take out the burnt and the crystals, and I'm gonna have some of this spumoni.
It is kind of funny because honestly, there's been, when I do have a hankering for some ice cream, right? This is when the freezer actually gets cleaned out, because there's like 6 gallons in there. And I'm like, dude, we are stocked up. How many
rainbow sherbets does a guy need?
There's 1 scoop in each of those 6 gallons. So in that entire freezer shelf, I can get half a bowl of just a mix of freezer burnt ice cream. So the good news is, if I have a hankering for ice cream, it does clear out a lot of space, because then I just end up getting irritated and throwing everything away. So that works out.
Beautiful.
Yeah, works out good.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the holiday season because this happened to me today. I venture out today.
Oh, wow.
And I go get me some lunch.
Okay.
Something that's sneaking up on me that I'm not paying attention to, kind of like the contents of my freezer, is the price of a value meal these days.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had a value meal in a while. Break it down for me.
Well, I mean, I these combo meals at fast food places.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I go to Carl's Jr. and here's my hot take for the evening. Double Western bacon cheeseburger is the greatest fast food burger around, except for In-N-Out.
I'm not even going to argue that, because I do love the double Western bacon cheeseburger.
Well, hey,
it's been forever since I've had it, but
yeah,
when I was in high school, I consumed that on the daily. You know what I mean?
Hey, that thing is going to drop you. You add in the Crisp Cut fries,
right,
and a soda, and I drive off, and I swear I heard the lady say that'll be $14.60 at the first window.
Yeah,
for me, right? So I'm like, all right. It's the holiday season. This is the holiday season, Tyler, because I go up to pay. As I'm cursing the whole cost of it, oh, the guy in front of you paid for your meal.
Oh, wow.
So here we go. We've talked about this on the show before.
Yeah.
What's the thing to do?
You got to pay it forward, right? Man. Yeah.
Guy behind me, $26.
$26. Yeah. You know what? Is it bad form if you go, hey, what are the next 3 cars? What's their bills look like? Oh, I'll pay for that dude with the soda. $3.79.
Oh, you got a milkshake back there? I'll take that.
Yeah.
So happy Thanksgiving, right? It's the holiday season. People are in a giving mood, and ended up costing me $26.
Yeah, I actually.
He's going to look at that transaction and be like, "You got a date? What?"
Yeah, exactly.
What happened?
Yeah, when they said, well, when you asked, I want to pay for the guy behind me, is that okay? And she said it's $26. Did you say, how many people are in that car? I guess, because it looks like a Geo Metro. Like, it shouldn't be $26, man.
Hey, okay, let's get serious here for a second. Yeah. Let's transition. I've got an amazing couple of people that you need to meet tonight. Our listeners need to meet tonight. I know Alex Biegel through work. And in conversations with her at work, I found her to be an incredible person, deep, rich life, a faith-centered life. And then I start hearing about her husband, and I'm like, okay, done. Get on the program. So tonight, Tyler Gould, we have Bruce and Alex Biegel on the richest men in town. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. We had a chance to kind of have a very brief conversation the other night, and I was fired up, man. I'm excited about what these two are going to bring to the table, and what their experiences are, man.
We're going to lean on Bruce. Okay, I'm going to let him in.
Okay.
And we're going to lean on Bruce. Like the pressure, he's going to feel some pressure right when he comes on, because I think he's got answers to some of these situations, not hypothetical situations, real marriage situations.
Well, and here's the cool thing, Bruce. Mike and I just were kind of quizzing each other about some things that we're dealing with in our married life, and our spouses are not with us. And you're going to be able to answer those questions together. So that'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Bruce and Alex, welcome to the richest men in town. How are we doing tonight?
Thank you. We're doing great.
We're doing good. Hey guys, how are you guys?
Yeah, Bruce is nervous. Bruce is nervous now. Like, what's the situation we're going to hit him with? This wasn't on the script, and this is what you get. You come on our program, we welcome you, and then we let you in like 17 minutes late. So we've been rolling on some things. Bruce, I got some situations. Tyler's given me what he would do, not necessarily the right answers. It's just what he would do.
Do I get to know his answers before you ask me?
No. No. Okay, here's a couple situations, and they're kind of related. Okay. It's date night. You're off of work. You're going home. You and Alex have a great evening planned. It's super exciting, right? Wonderful feeling. Love that feeling. And she comes out in an outfit that maybe you haven't seen yet before. And maybe it's not something that you're really feeling. We call it a misfit. That's fine. That's kind of a dad joke, Alex. So she comes out and it's kind of a miss. And we're just wondering, how does one Bruce handle that?
Well, what makes that situation tricky is that I kind of wear my emotion on my sleeve, my face. So honestly, I think my face would probably give it away before I was able to really say anything. So I think I would be busted right away, because the first expression I would have would be
he wouldn't have to say,
and you wouldn't try to cover it. It would be like, and I'm out.
Well, that's a weakness of mine, Mike. I try not to always have the answer on my face or what I'm thinking, but I think in that situation I might be a little bit, you chose that one,
and Alex would take that lovingly, and all would be well. She would go change. She would be like, and I'm gonna rock this every day for the next 3 weeks now. How would Alex, how would you take that?
I definitely agree that he speaks using his face more than his words. He would definitely cover up,
Tyler, poker night at Bruce's house.
Yeah, he would lose. No, but he does definitely share his emotions on his face. He definitely covers up afterwards with a lot of kindness. So he's learning to catch himself with that. And he knows that I am not a fashionista in the slightest. I'm much more comfort over like looking fancy. Okay. So I take to heart that if he has an opinion about it, it probably wouldn't really hurt my feelings. So
all right. I like it.
It's something bad whenever I have it, on my face. It's not always
true. He could be shocked because it's so good.
I might handle that situation by saying something like, "Oh wow, that kind of looks like the other one that you have. Maybe it's red. Oh, that kind of looks like the red one. I really like that red one on
That
you."
was my move.
Was it really? Yeah. So I might kind of just start shifting towards the one that I really like, so the focus comes off of the one that she has on. So,
and I'd fall for it, and I'd be like, "Man, he loves me so much," and we'd have a great date night.
Well, that's true, but not everything that you wear you have to love, right?
True. He said that before too. If I ask him what he thinks about it, he'll be like, "I don't really love it, but if you love it, then you look good in it," And that's
oh man, we're getting some gems here, Tyler. I feel like we went from podcast host to game show host, and it's like the newlywed game.
Yeah.
So situation number 2. Hold on, there was a situation you had a twist, Tyler, to that outfit one, didn't you?
I don't. I mean, I was just kind of working through it. I was working through it with you. I don't know.
Hey, situation number 2, Alex. I don't know if you are a manicure person.
I get my nails done.
You do.
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Bruce, here's the situation. Let's say, hypothetical, this never happened to me. Disclaimer. Your wife comes home and the color is not very desirable, and you know it's not an outfit. This thing is like a month commitment, maybe even more. How do you handle them apples?
You know what's really funny about that, Mike, is just about every week and a half to 2 weeks as she comes home, I don't like the color. I don't. And you know what's funny is that she leaves her nail appointment and she'll come home and she'll say, well, what do you think? But what has taken place over the previous week and a half before she's gone to her next appointment is, I think I like this color. What do you think? Do you think that I should go with this color? Yeah, I think that you should go with that pink. I think it would look really great. Or go with the red, or maybe go with the fall color because it's fall or the holidays. Then she'll come home with something completely different. And then she comes home expecting me to be like, oh, I love it. And I'm like, but that's not what we talked about. Not that that's what we talked about. Just that's what I was expecting to see. So she catches me off guard, kind of like that piece of clothing that, she just kind of surprises you.
That's
crib ball.
accurate, because you guys just don't understand. It's a very stressful situation to think about what color you want your nails to be, because like you said, Mike, it is a commitment. And when you get there, they're crunched for time. They might have taken you in late and you're still wondering what color you want. You got your inspo picture from Pinterest ready to go.
But the lighting in the place looks different.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute.
Yes. So
is it powder? Is it gel? Like what?
You're getting deep, Mike.
So, so you get your colors and you're like, oh my gosh, they have a million colors to choose from and none of them match my pictures. Then you start panicking and you're trying to rush because you're using one hand to flip through all the colors while they're taking off the original color. So I come home and I'm like, what do you think? And I know if I don't like it, he's definitely not going to like it. So that's a very true situation in our home.
You see, I like really, kind of bright colors, fun colors, and she likes more neutral. So she'll come home with something neutral, and I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, it's not really a color.
And
so
yet,
what do you think about the color? I'm like, well, not really a color.
But every time I get my nails done, I will ask him what color I should do, and I know I'm not going to pick what he wants, but I need him to just kind of help me through it.
and Bruce is answering like there's 4 choices. There's 4,000 choices, right? So you're like, how about blue? And there's 1,700 kinds of blue. Yeah. It's a really unfair question for dudes.
I think if the roles were reversed and say I was the woman and I was going to get my nails done and I chose a color, I would have to think strategically. So if I choose a color that I'm like, you know what, that was a bad decision. Well, then you can just go chip your nail on something and say, oh, honey, I'm sorry, I got to go back and just get them to fix my nail and just change the color when you're there. So it could be more of a.
Yeah, we would go in debt.
Yeah, right. $140 a week just to get those nails done.
You know what's a good thing though? My husband and Bruce and I get pedicures together. So we have time to sit there together and decide on colors.
Tyler, we've talked about this, Tyler.
We have talked about this. Yeah.
And you're still not on board with this.
I'm not on board with this, but hey, to each his or her own. Okay, there you go.
Now, Tyler, do you just not like somebody touching your feet, or is it just
it's a feminine thing to do?
No, I mean, my feet have
seen
it's like
battles.
A
$50
my feet have seen the battles, man. They've played a little basketball, some football. They're hanging in there, but they're stretching, man.
Tyler, they need a good scrubbing and a good massage.
Get those cuticles off.
I'm with you. We did it on a date night the other day.
Mike told me he just went, and honestly, the vision of Mike's feet really, I was like, I can't, man. No. Like I can't. That's where it all kind of stems from. Yeah.
Like the stuff is flying.
Yeah.
It's intense.
And they're talking to Vietnamese about you and you have no idea what they're saying.
And they're whispering. Right. They're whispering and the people across the place hear it. And they're whispering back and it's like, what is going on here?
Mike, we usually cut the bag in the little the place where you put your feet. What's it called? I don't know what it's called, the proper name. But I guess when you probably pull off your shoes and your socks, they probably put about 3 bags over it, right?
So your heels don't break open the bag.
This is a pretty bad case.
Let's just anyway, in my pedicure experience, the lady kind of mailed in the massage part. So, I gave a Yelp review.
Now, do you do the manicure as well with your wife, or?
No. It was just the pedicure and no color, no like clear. Or do you get clear or anything?
Okay, yeah. Confession, I do clear because I feel like it's incomplete if I don't.
He gets the full thing. I'm with you. Okay, here's the thing, Bruce. Because if I didn't, and then the timing is all off, because I'm done, and she's sitting here. It's like, well, what are we doing now? Like, I would have gotten clear too. Maybe a little French.
I feel like I have been like tuned out on this conversation for the last 2 minutes. Are we still talking? Like, what is going on?
Okay, so then we got talking. So I'm on COVID house arrest, and it got me in my freezer. I don't know if you have spent any time, guys. I don't know who does the cooking. Bruce, are you a cooker?
I'm really not one to cook, but I can just throw some stuff together and it just tastes good. So,
which says about
it's
how my
like
cooking is.
It's not complicated stuff though. It's very simple.
Yeah, but he does more of the work than I do. I'm more the cleaner. He's more the cooker.
Wow. Okay. Well, we Tyler and I have some Blackstone griddle in the backyard, and I have taken it upon myself to cook all of the meals this week from the contents of our freezer.
And whether you should have a guy with COVID being your chef is a whole nother conversation. We're not even talking about that, right? We're moving on.
Another thing. Have you guys checked out your freezer? We have a theory. We have a saying that everyone has a side yard, right? The front yard looks good. Everyone's life looks good. Everything's perfect. And then everyone's got this side yard of just like garbage and dump run and trash and right. And we've made the decision tonight that the freezer is the interior equivalent to the side yard, right? Like I'm gonna go hang out at the Hotel Gould this next week if I can test negative. And Tyler's not too keen if I just woke up one morning and just started opening up his freezer and started looking through.
You got to ask first if you're going to get in that freezer. And I got
to there's some stuff
I'll put you in
there.
Another room and I'll start reorganizing and I'll say, all right, you can come in now.
Is your guys' freezer under control?
It is, but we don't have kids. So I feel like we have an excuse to have a clean freezer. It's pretty empty. It is an apartment size freezer. So we can't really have too much stuff in it, but we've got like some frozen rice and frozen fruit and like quinoa.
Okay, so does quinoa need to be frozen? Like, is that a
what is that you have in there? Cauliflower.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, honestly, when we lived in our house and we had our, we bought our fridge and the freezer is much larger, and so we had a lot more stuff in the freezer. That was definitely had freezer burn. And I have to ask though, Tyler. Now, are you concerned about Mike going through your freezer because you hide maybe some money in there, or do you hide something? I mean, a special object? Because
that would be great if that was the case. But I was telling Mike, I have kids, but they're starting to leave the house, so I really don't have a good excuse anymore. I only have one here, and like I was telling Mike, I don't even look past the Egos, man. It's like the Egos are there, whatever's behind that, I don't even want to know. It's probably been there since the other kids were at home when they were like 7 or 8, and they're all in college now. So I don't know. It's one of those things. Although, the other thing that the freezer does is it holds several gallons of ice cream that have very little ice cream in it. That's always the reality of the freezer. So
now, is that because, Tyler, you can't wait to try the new ice cream that you bought, and so you don't finish
That's the funny thing. I'm not like a sweet tooth kind of guy. I don't, and so, but every once in a while I'll have a hankering for some ice cream. I open that freezer up and there's a half a scoop of
and like
of
ice
10 flavors.
So you kind of have like the Baskin Robbins in your freezer, right? But just like 1 or 2 bites.
It'd be better if I just had one of those pink little spoons and I just did a sample and then we'd be good, right? Because then that's
that's when life gives you that situation, you just do like my mom does, and like with all the leftover cereals, she just combines them all and makes like a cereal goulash.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to end up that way in your tummy anyway. So.
Oh, man.
So you wonder what the guys at Richest Men in Town sit around and think about. It's really deep stuff. It's super deep.
Yeah.
These are all questions though that people want to know.
Yeah, it's true.
You know?
They're questions of the soul.
Went around on the street and asked each other these questions. It would really I don't know, a lot more friendships with people like me. I think people in general are lonely, and if you just start asking them,
what's in your freezer? You could be best friends after that. You never know.
Never know.
That's true. I mean, I think that maybe you learn a little bit about someone from the contents of their freezer. And what does that say about me? It's like, like
I think I'm gonna go. I think it's that life-changing magic of tidying up thing, like condo. Like I got to go condo on my.
Oh yeah.
On my freezer, like kind of like my closet, like that one time I found out I had 14 belts or something. It's like, what just happened?
Wow.
Does the ice cream bring you joy, Tyler?
It really doesn't. What's funny is when I open the freezer and I'm really feeling ice cream, and I open it and it's just this minuscule amount that has the ice on it. I'm like, all right, it's all going in the trash. That's when the freezer gets cleaned out. I just chuck it all.
Okay, so
then someone will come home and be like, who threw away the ice cream that I was saving? I'm like, well,
what about this move? Kelly Freeman's a big fan of the going into the freezer and just like grabbing chocolate chips.
I like that move.
It's like,
that's a good move.
Is it?
Yeah, that's a strong move. I like it.
I would prefer Reese's peanut butter cups.
I would agree.
Oh,
yeah.
But the chocolate chip, that's a strong game as well.
So I always keep my chocolate in the fridge when I eat it, and I'm a dark chocolate person. I stopped keeping.
Oh, Tyler.
I love dark chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started doing that until one day I bit into a piece of frozen dark chocolate and broke the cap off one of my teeth. So I've yet to do that again. I'm a little traumatized by it.
Yeah,
that'll do it.
That's interesting. I like it.
You got a little flavor, Tyler, in the pre-show call. You got a little flavor for what Alex and Bruce are bringing to life. I just wanted to let Alex know, like, and Bruce, but when I'm hanging out with Alex in work capacity, she exudes faith. Like, it is her. And I respect that. I admire that. That gets me talking to her way past whatever calendar time frame she gave me to talk to her. And then it leads to hanging out and invitations to come on the podcast. So I'm excited to dig in. Alex, just hanging out. You have taught me a lot about this journey and about faith. And then she starts talking to me, Bruce, about your journey. And it's just like, okay, you guys together are kind of a powerhouse. And I know that Tyler and I are going to benefit from our time together tonight. And really, in the end, that's all that matters. I mean, we love our listeners, especially those in Sierra Leone, Tanzania. Keep tuning in. We're ranked. We're kicking. Strong. We're kicking the charts in Tanzania. We're like number 10 family parenting podcast in Tanzania. There might be 10 families there. I don't know.
Say there might be. That might be the entire population in Tanzania.
So I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to connect with you guys tonight.
Yeah. We're blessed to be able to do it. So thanks for asking. Yeah. I appreciate that you've been able to spend that time with Alex, of course, because she does kind of share her faith whenever she can, wherever she can. And what's beautiful about just kind of the Christian connection is that when you walk into a room, whether it's a work event, a school event, you can sometimes see that there's something about this individual that they must know the Lord. There's something there, they know Jesus. So anyways, we're excited to be here,
We joked in the pre-show about C.S. Lewis, but that reminds me of that quote from C.S. Lewis, right? Live so that other people will want to know him because they know you. Right?
Definitely.
It's kind of a cool thought.
Well,
Tyler,
why don't we start there? I'd like to know where that comes from, Alex. Where does this desire to kind of share your faith? Where does that come from?
That's a really good question. So, I was born and raised in a Christian household, and so it's kind of just been instilled in me my whole life. I've grown up going to church my whole life as well. And because I went to a small private Christian school, literally from kindergarten all the way through graduate school, I'm very used to the Christian and faith-based community and people always being there for you. So that's been a huge part of my world. And I've always been really passionate about faith. I never really had deep struggles to go through, honestly, until maybe the last few years. So my faith was a little bit, not shallow, but it wasn't as deep as it is now. And I've always felt like I've wanted to share my faith, something that I do every, so we're Seventh-day Adventists. So we honor the seventh day as the day of rest. And so sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, we take a rest day. And so something that I've done, honestly, I can't even remember when I started it and why I started it, but it was at least when I was in high school. So I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. I started sending out a group text to just random people that were important to me every Friday evening to kind of remind them like, okay, God gave us this day. Let's just like take a minute. And it's literally grown to be, at this point, it's like 100 people on this thing. And I've been I don't even know why. I wish I could remember the moment where God was like, you should do this. So I can remember, but just recently, a few months ago, I randomly went up to a lady at Costco because she had the most beautiful green eyes. And I walk up to her and I told Bruce, I was like, I got to tell her she has such beautiful eyes. So I went up to her and told her that. And she said, can you text me that every week? Because I just love to hear that every week. And she kind of laughed about it. And I said, well, I can't do that, but I can add you to this list of people that I text every week. And she's like, sure. And we've become friends. I've met her once. So anyway, that was kind of a tangent, but it's those kinds of things that I just thrive. I thrive doing that kind of stuff. And I feel like it's just because that's how God designed us. And I've always been a pretty like upbeat, joyful, happy, goofy person. So those kind of go hand in hand. And this is jumping way ahead, but when I found Bruce, he had all the exact same qualities that just majorly attracted me to him. And so us together, like you said, kind of a powerhouse, we can't really stop doing it.
I love that. I'm curious.
Hold on. I just gotta throw this out there.
Yeah.
Like, it would be another like total tangent, but it would be kind of cool to know what message would you like texted to you every week as a reminder, right? I think that's just kind of cool that she says, hey, can you text me that every week? Because I think that there's just some things that, we talk a lot about identity. We talk a lot about remembering. It would just be cool. It's almost like if there was a service where it's like, hey, AI, I would like you to send me a message every week reminding me that I am a child of God, or reminding me that, right, I'm redeemed, or like, I just think that that's a cool thought. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I like it even better that it's not AI and it's coming from Alex, right?
Even better.
I mean, right? I think honestly though, right? You could sign up for a lot of different things where,
but hey, Tyler,
that's a positive message, but
that's a move. That's a life hack that you've taught me, right? Sunday morning when it's quiet, when the house is quiet, you come down with your phone and you kind of go through your contacts, who's on your mind, and you shoot them a text. Hey, thinking about you. I know you're going through some things. And I just think that's just such a cool thing.
It is a cool
It's a small thing. And I think that's God. Yeah. That's how God works, right? Through these simple ways.
It's small to someone like us, I guess, but it's so huge to the person who you are speaking those words to, who you give that uplifting compliment to. And I feel rebuked when she says that, because here we are going through Costco. I'm just trying to get out the front door, and
you turn around and I was gone.
I'm literally about 7-8 aisles up, and I look back, I'm like, where's Alex? Where is she at? I'm trying to get to the car, because that's a family mantra, right? No detours at Costco. Like you gotta stick to the script. Exactly. And so then I look back and I see her speaking with this lady, and of course that was the one she gave the compliment to, and it was just kind of I felt rebuked in the moment, because Alex got out of herself, right, out of her own head, to be like, you know what, I'm just going to simply talk to this lady and I'm going to compliment her, because maybe that's what she needed to hear at that very moment. Who knows what she's going through in life, but it seems so small to me. And here I am just trying to get to the front door. If I just would have taken a second, it makes you wonder how many opportunities that we miss on a daily basis if we would just stop for a second, look around at the people beside us, next to us, wherever you are, and just simply give them a compliment, because everyone has something going on in their life. And
Well, kind of like what Bruce said, you never know how it's going to impact somebody, because sometimes I'll get responses. Like some people respond to every time. Oh my gosh, I needed this. Thank you so much. And there's some people that really don't say anything. And there's one lady who goes to my church. She rarely responds to them, but she came up to me last week. I did the children's story for church. And before I could even do the children's story, she came up to me and was like, that one last week, like it hit me so hard and I really needed it. And I didn't realize what I was missing. And it just like flooded my heart with happiness, because we don't know how we're affecting people all the time. You may not get that response back. And it's just, if you're trusting that God's taking your words and giving them to the right person, then that's all you really can do.
I have to be vulnerable with this, because Alex has taught me how to just kind of stop and to look for those opportunities, because in all honesty, sometimes I can talk to just about anybody on the street, but I can be a little, I'm not introverted, but sometimes I can just kind of, a little bit shy.
Yeah.
And so
it's not ashamed, right? It's not ashamed. It's just, you're not out there. Yeah.
Right. And so as I've seen her do this since we've been together, at first I'm like, just leave the people alone. They are trying to get on with their day. They're trying to get, buy whatever they're buying or do whatever they're doing.
Some might think that still.
Leave them alone. But I've seen the beauty in this as well. And so she's really taught me to just kind of stop and smell the roses, stop and just look for those opportunities and pray for those opportunities. And it's really been, it's been a blessing ultimately, because I fought it for so long. And then as I stopped and kind of got out of my own head, and I'm like, wait a second, look how these people's faces light up whenever you step out of yourself for a second and you just uplift somebody else. And it's been a beautiful thing to be a part of. And,
well, I love that. I love that concept of rest and take a minute, right? Like, I think if the world needs a billboard right now, it might be that.
Yeah.
Rest, take a minute. And so many times when you take a minute, when you slow the self down, whether it's in prayer, meditation, so many times when you focus on that presence, that spirit comes, right? That spirit comes. It's like, and now you can respond and be led, right? Be led to people that need you. And I think it's just cool to sound different when we talk, right? If we're truly disciples of Jesus Christ, it'd be kind of cool when we intersect with people and we walk away that people are like, well, I felt, and not like just around the holidays, right? But like all the time. Holidays are an amazing time where a lot of folks are thinking about spiritual things and sacred things. And, but I think that it'd be kind of cool to be like, man, every time I hang out with that Tyler guy, he sometimes he talks about weird stuff, but then it's like
90%.
And then he gets me thinking, or he says something kind and intentionally compliments me, or there's something powerful there.
After he gives me a hard time for my pedicure, right? But I'm curious, you guys. I want to. We're already in the waters of faith here, so I want to dissect this a little bit, if you guys are okay with that. Because Alex, you made the comment that when you were younger, as you've gotten older, you've had some depth to your faith. And I'm curious if you've thought about the process of that, if you've thought about what that looks like and how that's grown and where you've seen those growth points. I think it's interesting when we look at our own faith. Like if I look back when I was 16, 17 years old, totally different than where I am today, right? And obviously life circumstances influence that, but I'm curious what, in looking back, what does that journey look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the things that my faith was almost a little bit easy growing up, because I had, my parents have been married for 35 years. I have 3 siblings that I love and get along with. And I have my church community, my school community. So I really didn't have much that ever really shook my faith. So faith was kind of an easy thing. Like, oh, God's so good. He does all these great things. I'm really blessed. I didn't really have anything to like get me into that zone of like being angry with God about something. So I just kind of floated through in the faith world. And then this sounds so negative, but marriage is really what shook me to my core, where I had to like really get like deep. I guess really hit a very hard rock bottom. And I know Bruce and I both did, and not for necessarily negative things. Obviously it had to happen in order to build us back up with God's grace. It was just, yeah, I feel like you can't really know what your faith can be until something doesn't go your way, and you have to really surrender and rely fully on God.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, can I just point out the irony of that, right? Because you talk about floating through and you talk about easy. I'll put an asterisk on that, qualify that a little bit. But then you say one of the reasons why is because your mom and dad have been married 35 years. And then you say marriage was this trial of faith. I would love to, after we're done with you, get your parents in here and talk about what 35 years marriage was like, right? Because it probably, they would say a lot of the same things, right? It was their faith work. It was their foundation and really, really deep work to get there. I think Tyler and I are always joking. Everybody wants to be the cute old couple that's been married 50 years, but nobody wants to sit down and ask them about that journey.
Yeah.
So true.
You know, about that process, about that work.
And that's the reality, right? I mean, relationships are one of the keys to happiness in this life, right? Mm-hmm. And the relationships that we create, some of those have the most potential to hurt us, right? Because we're the most vulnerable in those spaces, and if we're doing it right, we let ourselves kind of we bear all, and then we open ourselves up to some criticism, some whatever it is, right? You know, Kelly coming in and you telling her nails you don't like her color. I mean, that's
not how I handled it. That's not
no, you did. You handled it good. You handled it really good.
I think that's what's so cool about having a church community, though, because I was following my grandma friends, because I have grandma friends at church who I literally look up to, and I texted throughout the difficulties that we've had in marriage, and they were really encouraging, and they gave me their personal stories. And so I think that's what's so cool about how God designed humanity, is that we're not all the same age. We have, like, for us, we have people that we look up to and who mentor us, and then we get to teach a youth class at church and mentor those that are younger than us. So that's helpful.
Yeah, you know, I definitely had a lot to do with the whole trials and hardships when we first got married, because to be completely honest, I mean, it's quite a long story, and we can definitely go there.
We got some time.
Alex and I actually, we really got married a little too soon. And then, so Alex and I get married, and then we started dating, ultimately, is what happened. And so we were unable to go through a lot of the, I guess, your typical experiences that you would have with your future spouse, because maybe you live in the same city, or maybe even the same household, right? Under the same roof. And I was in Texas. And so I did try. I moved up to SAC. I transferred with my job, and I was coming up on the weekends. But, you know, when I left Texas and my family, my church family, you know, friends and all of that, things got really, really challenging for myself. And then I just abruptly cut things off with Alex literally overnight when she got back from a trip. And then I hit the road in my truck, and I went back to Texas because I was absolutely terrified and afraid.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. And, you know, Alex and I have completely, really different upbringings. Because, yeah, you know, Alex, as she shared, parents have been married for 35 years. All of her siblings, you know, they've had the faith, or there's been trials, of course. I don't think anything's come easy. You still have to hang on to your faith and exercise it. But yeah, you know, I had kind of a complete opposite, because my parents were divorced when I was 3. And then I grew up hating God. But how can you hate someone you don't know? And then, you know, some stuff happened to me when I was a kid. And, you know, my anger turned towards God, because I'm not sure why we do that in the world. I hear a lot of people, when bad things happen to them, they blame God. And no one ever blames the devil. No one ever really seems to blame, you know, the other you know, side of things. But just to kind of give a little bit of background to, you know, how she was brought up compared to how I was brought up. And, you know, our walk with faith has been completely different. You know, I've been a Christian now for 6 years, and I think testimonies are very, very powerful, because testimonies never stop. I mean, your testimony is always, it's a living thing. It's a living experience. Every day is really a new testimony. So you have a past history, and I think it's so important to never forget how God has led you. But every day is an opportunity to just continue to add on to that testimony. So there's a lot there. So I'll stop.
Okay, stop there for a second, but I want to dive in, because I think that, one of the things that's been a blessing in this podcast in particular, in the conversations that Mike and I are willing to have, or able to have, is that we talk to people that come from varying backgrounds, that come from varying positions of faith, right? Or levels of faith, or however you want to define that, different religious backgrounds, right? So we're all over the place. But one of the common threads in the conversations is how do we get through difficult times? How do we connect with that higher power, right? However we're going to label that, and how does that sustain us through some of those difficult times? And so I'm curious, Bruce, to kind of, if we can talk a little bit about your faith journey, and it's interesting you say you've been a Christian for 6 years. I'd love to hear about that. Like, when does that become something that you really grasp onto, that you feel like this is part of my path moving forward? Right?
What I want to, before we do that, I just want to, I love that both journeys are inspired, right? Both journeys are part of who you are, right? Like, so Alex, maybe you're blessed, and one of your strengths, one of your gifts of the Spirit is a believing heart, right? And maybe maybe you can't point to a moment where you knew that the word of God was true, or you knew that Jesus Christ was your savior. And here we have Bruce. I got a feeling like you're going to have some moments.
Yeah. And it's interesting because
I can have a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, I guess I always knew. And I can say, no. I can tell you where I was, where I was standing, right? I can tell you the circumstance. And I just love the fact that they're both acceptable to God, that they're both part of.
I think you can jump onto the path, or you can wander and find yourself on the path, right? And either way, there's not a right way to do it, right? We get to that place, and we found something that's going to push us forward. I love that too, and I think that, I listening to the both of you talk, it's funny because I always give my wife a hard time. I'm like, yeah, but you grew up in the Brady family, it's like everything was perfect, and I grew up in the storm, man. So I'm curious, Bruce. I'd love to, to kind of hear where what your thoughts are on connecting faith to your life and how that's impacted you.
Well, my life did a total 180. I'll try not to take up too much time here, Tyler, but ultimately
we got all night, man.
It's a long story. It's a story worth telling.
Yeah,
it is a long story as far as like my kind of upbringing and how, leading up to this moment sitting here now, if you would have told me 6.5 or 7 years ago that I'd be sitting here with my wife, giving your testimony about becoming a Christian and how God saved you and your life turned around, I would say, you're absolutely crazy. You're out of your mind. What are you talking about? And there probably would have been some other choice words, I'm sure, but yeah, I guess I have to talk about my BC life a little bit before Christ. It was pretty messy. It was an absolute mess. It was a lot of chasing the things of this world, trying to fill that hole in my heart that, during that time, I didn't realize that it was a God-shaped hole in my heart that I was completely oblivious of, but I had a normal upbringing until I was 3, and which 3 years, not that long, but when you're younger, you don't really know any different. But when my parents did divorce at 3, we went to go live with my grandparents pretty quickly after that, and my mom, she ended up getting remarried, a few years after that, whenever I was 7. But in between that time, it was living with my grandparents and just being around my mom and sister and aunt and, grandma. My grandfather, he was it's kind of a father figure, but he worked a lot. So I didn't really see him all that much, during that time. Anyways, but she remarries at 7. My
Dad
stepmom-
not around?
No. So for about a year after the divorce took place, we did go and visit with him. I don't know if it was every weekend, I can't remember, but I knew I always hated going over there. I remember, always running and hiding underneath the dining room table when he was coming because I just didn't want to go over there to his house. But he ended up getting remarried to, he's still married to her now, my stepmother. Unfortunately, I don't have really a relationship with him today. There's been efforts over the years that have been made, and I'll kind of unpack that a little bit more later. But so my mom gets remarried, and of course my biological father got remarried. And when that happened, there was a lot of, my stepmother at the time was just, she threw away a lot of our stuff, over there at his house, and was kind of just trying to get us out of the picture really completely. She didn't really seem to care too much for my sister and I. And so it just kind of fizzled out. And so from that point on, my mom gets remarried. And, soon after my mom gets married to my stepfather, then he starts sexually abusing me, for 5 years. So from really 7 to 12, important years in a kid's life, they're very impactful. I just became a completely different individual during that time. So, and it, just to think back on that time now, but, I'll jump ahead real quick and say, I'm so thankful for everything that has taken place in my life, because ultimately, if these events did not happen to me, then I don't know where I would be today. And I thank God so much where I am today. And I'm so grateful and thankful. But, so you have the abuse.
Kind of bless the broken road, right?
Yeah.
That was our first dance song at our wedding, actually.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I just want to highlight what you just said. I mean, I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to throw a highlight on that. Like how beautiful it is that you can look back, and when we do it, when we do find that path, and we do come to know the things that you've come to know, you can look back on even scorched earth has a golden hue to it, right? Has a golden edge to it, where like there's some things that happen to you that were out of your control, and probably where that anger towards God came from, right? Feeling helpless. And now from the perspective that you have at this stage, you can say, I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah. That's redemption in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
That's really the power of the cross, I mean, it's really amazing, the redemption stories that not only that you experience yourself, but that you hear that other people go through. And
I got a buddy who's going through something right now, and I just texted him and said today, and said, everything that you've done has prepared you for what you're about to do. Amen. Right? It's like, again, when David faces Goliath and he's like, no, I've got experience here.
Yeah.
Right? I've been delivered. I know the Lord. Bring this Philistine on, right? Like I love
exercising that faith, isn't it?
I love it. Yeah,
and
I love that.
Also, I love that, Mike, because that's also claiming a hold of faith. That is exercising faith. And so one thing that I had started doing was just thanking God already. So there was a point to where you go to God in prayer, you're like, Lord, please help this, or please do this, or please let this happen. And then it kind of started to switch up, I think, as the Holy Spirit has just, helped me learn over the years now. I just thank God already. I'm like, Lord, thank you for answering this prayer already. I know that you're working it out. I know that you are making a way, and I don't have to understand it, because, our ways are not his ways, and our thoughts are not his thoughts. And, he's such a good father. And that's so amazing to sit back and know that, he'll give you the desires of your heart, and just thank him. I mean, it really, really helps when you get off your knees, when you're just already thanking God for answering the prayer, even though it hasn't happened right then. It could, but just knowing that, all things are working together for good. So anyways.
So what's the practical application, right? Because we've got people that are listening to this right now that are in the middle of it, right? They're in the middle of the storm, and they're looking for a lifeline. And maybe they're at that point that, I'm prayed out, right? I've said all I can say. Nothing is coming to me in a way that's changing my circumstance. And so I'm prayed out. What's at what point, or what's the practical application where we could say, hey, if you do these things, or if you have this level of patience, this will happen? I mean, what's the answer there, you two?
Well, you're always going to go through seasons, I believe, in your spiritual walk. You're going to have your hills, you're going to have your valleys, your really high moments, and there's going to be days to where you really feel like, wow, am I going to come out and see the other side of this? I can speak for myself. One thing that's always helped me is, and it's going to be different for everyone, but of course, just getting outside of nature, completely detaching from technology and from any kind of entertainment whatsoever. I think if you can just take something spiritual with you, whether it's a book, whether it's the Bible itself, or something uplifting, and just simply get out of your head and just take in nature. And there's so much beauty. But for whatever reason, David has always really resonated with me so much within the Bible, because the absolute guilt that he went through after he committed, intentional sin with Bathsheba and slept with her, and then of course, got her husband killed. He was in absolute despair. He felt defeated. Sometimes I like to think that, there's been times when I have become a Christian, I'm like, oh no, I've messed up. God would never, ever forgive me. I have committed the unpardonable sin. God, what can you do with me now? Here I am again, making these same silly mistakes. But to answer your question, Psalms, when I read through the Psalms, there is something that is so powerful about the Psalms, because it of course, you're not in the Gospels, although there's a lot of gospel references in the Psalms, but it's David opening up his heart. He's pouring out his heart to God. He's fearful, then he's praising God, and then I tripped up, I sinned again. Oh Lord, have mercy on my soul. Create in me a new heart, a clean heart. And it's just kind of like this cycle that as humans, as Christians, we kind of go through, because I know when I became a Christian, I thought that I had to have it all in order. Kind of like when I got married, I thought I had to have it all figured out. Little did I realize that's when the journey was just beginning. Whoa, I didn't know that. And I want to make sure that the other listeners know that Alex and I are not sitting here claiming that we've arrived by any means. And we're just we're happy to be sharing our story. And so, those are some practical things that I've done for myself, completely detaching from media, grabbing whatever book or music is so strong and powerful as well. And that's in the Psalms too. And just simply getting out into the open. And, the Holy Spirit, I think sometimes you can sit or on your knees, stand, whatever you may be doing, and open your heart up to God. I think that at times you don't have to give any words, because God knows our hearts. He sees our struggles. He doesn't want us to be going through moments like that either. But on the flip side, those are such crucial and important moments in our lives, because it's causing you to exercise your faith, but it's okay to come to God and say, Lord, I don't feel like praising right now. I don't feel like listening to another message, that's okay. God, he meets us where we're at. So that's a little bit of practical things that I do, but
I love it.
Alex,
you're up.
I was going to echo what he said about music, because that's just something that my whole life it's been so powerful to me. For me personally, when marriage got to be honestly unbearable, and you really feel like you don't know what to do, and you're so devastated and just tired, exhausted, really. What got me through it, if I could pick one thing, was music. And it was a song that's by Maverick City, and it's called God Will Work It Out. And it just keeps saying, God will work it out. One thing I know, one thing I've found is that God will work it out. And I would just sit there and listen to it and just cry. And I just make myself believe it, because sometimes I didn't. And that's just one song. And of course, people got me through it too, because like I said a couple times, I have a great community here and people that I really had to get vulnerable with and open up with. And sometimes they start out almost like strangers. And I would encourage people to not be afraid to share what they're going through with people. Of course, if it's a safe person, you know, they're going to treat you with respect back. A lot of people would probably be like, wow, you too? And you had no idea that you actually ended up helping them as well as getting it off your chest. So those are two things that I would recommend.
And I love both of your thoughts. I think that adversary that, oh, you messed up again. Oh, you're never going to, and they'll say hide, right? That voice will say and hide, and no one else is doing what you're doing, right? And like you're the mistake, and the shame comes in, and the guilt comes in. And if Jesus came and talked to you face to face, none of that would be his language.
So true.
Right. And I think it's funny, you know, Tyler, in our church, we're doing Sunday school, we're doing a study of the Old Testament, and you know, and we look at the children of Israel like, come on, figure it out. And it's like 40 years, really? It took you 40 years? And it's like, I know Heavenly Father's like, oh, Michael, figure it out. It's taken him 47 so far. And he hasn't quite figured out. He hasn't quite figured out that thing or that thing, but he'll figure it out, right? Like we got to be patient with ourselves. We got to do the things that are going to feed our spirit, right? I love the fact that you not only said music, Alex, but you gave us the track. We'll drop that in the show notes for people, right? I mean, I think that there's just a soundtrack of our lives where we're going to get through some things, and there's just, and I think everybody's got that code. What is it that fills your heart, right? Helps you find that faith to, you know, ask for that new heart, to ask again for forgiveness, because it's there.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. By your side, like maybe Fifth Avenue North. And it's like, why are you trying to earn grace? Why are you striving these days? And I just love that reminder of like, look, we're working to become. We're not working to get praise for us. We're not working for treasures in the bank, right? So many times we're striving for the wrong reasons. It's like, can we strive to just be better disciples of Jesus Christ? Can we strive to become more like him? And that's where that grace is going to give us power and strength to do things we wouldn't be able to do on our own.
I think you hit it on the head, Mike, because, you know, in my experience, I've realized, like what you mentioned, if you do mess up when you're a Christian, you know, you go through that cycle of guilt and shame and despair, and God's done with me. What can he do with me now? And I used to isolate myself whenever I would stumble and fall, you know, but I always made the decision by the grace of God to get back up. And that's the number one takeaway, is to get back up, you know, if you do stumble and fall, because, you know, yes, grace is there and God knows the intent. So, but ultimately, I think the key to really success that I've experienced is community and connection. And, you know, when people have connections with other human beings and they're able to sit there and talk about whatever it is they might be going through, you know, a trusted friend or family or even a stranger, that can be so incredibly powerful. But community as well, if you are surrounded by people who truly love you. And ironically enough, I say that, and I feel kind of, you know, bad saying that, because when I first moved here with Alex and we got married, you know, because she was going to the church and she'd been going through her entire life. And it was so foreign to me to have all these individuals around me loving on me and wanting to talk to me. And inside, I have this absolute just...
I want to be anywhere but here.
Yeah, I just wanted to run. I mean, I'm telling you, Mike and Tyler, when the service was over, it was kind of like the Costco experience. I'm just trying to get out the front door. I am trying to get in my vehicle and just be gone, because I was afraid. I didn't want, because, I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes when you go to church, you want to appear like you have it all together.
Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Every week.
That's a different podcast.
every week. It's funny.
Right.
Side note here, I was talking to a friend of mine just a couple of days ago, and I said, and there's a little bit more of my story, you know, I've been arrested a few times over the years. That was BC, before Christ, you know. But you know, one of the rules they tell you whenever you get arrested and you get thrown in jail is that you cannot ask the other person why they're there. Well, I mean, come on. I mean, you want to know what the other person did to get in jail, just like they want to ask you. And I was talking to him and I said, it's funny because we have this natural desire to want to know what they did. And, I've gone to Celebrate Recovery quite a bit. That's always played an important part in my life. And I think it's a great, great program for a lot of people who are struggling with either whatever addiction it could be, or, whatever sin it is. But, when you go to CR, Celebrate Recovery, you look around and you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is a safe space. Everybody here, they're here for a reason, right? I'm not sure what it is, but you have that kind of natural desire to kind of know, well, why are they here? But for some reason, I was talking to him and I said, why is it when we go to church, that these same people at your church have issues going on, but for some reason, at least in my mind, I'm like, no, they have it all together. They have it all figured out. They don't need prayer. These people have it all figured out. And it's just kind of silly and funny to me at the same time how, depending on what environment or atmosphere that you're in, you kind of have this stereotypical mindset of they either have it all figured out, or you're like, okay, I can talk to these people because they're messed up like I am and I trust them. But ultimately, church and community, that should be a place to where you feel comfortable doing that. And sadly, it's not.
We're not there.
Oh,
I don't know about your church. My church is not there.
No,
I think we're getting there, right? I think we can, if with some intentionality, we can set some forums to be able to.
I just think it's interesting if you just in a congregation, if you just asked each individual, why are you here? Right. I mean, that's an interesting thought, right? Because if we were honest about that, why are we here? Why are we worshiping? Why are we, attempting to connect with God? I think that's an interesting question, and I there's probably one that should be fascinating, right? Yeah. Because I think that sometimes we go through these things, it becomes this rote practice, right? Where we just are like, hey, I do this thing because this is what I do. I get up on Sunday morning, I put on a shirt and a tie, I walk into this building, I say hi to everybody, I walk out of here, I turn on I watch the Raiders lose. It's like this thing that we do on Sundays, right? So
I actually try to do that at our church. I'm the worship coordinator. And I really try to just mix things up a little bit, keep it from getting too stale and just which is funny because I'm a very comfort zone person, but when it comes to church, I don't want to be in my comfort zone. So I do the complete opposite of what I do in my normal day-to-day practices. And I've asked some of those kind of questions up front where I'll be like, hey, anybody have like a super hard week? And it's dead silence. I'm like, okay, only me. I get it. No big deal. And then I keep doing that.
There's Alex being vulnerable on an island all by yourself.
No, seriously, guys, there's times where I'm talking about a song before we do it, or I'm talking about what happened to me that week, and I can't even get through it because I'm so emotional. And I hope that I'm hoping that it doesn't turn people off. They're like, okay, like, can she just talk to us without crying? But I'm trying to set that example of like, let's talk about if we've had a tough week with each other and be vulnerable. And I try to do something as often as I can where it's called I Saw Jesus, and essentially get up front and say, okay, just start passing the mic around and start saying, where did you see Jesus this week? And it's a really cool thing to do because you never really know what people are going to say. Sometimes it's small things that we don't really think would be that big of a deal. And sometimes it's like, whoa, like, I'm so glad we asked. I had no idea that was on your heart. So, I just love that experience. And there's actually, when we were talking, I thought of a song that I really like. It's called No Doubt About It. And it's by We the Kingdom. And honestly, I recommend any song by We the Kingdom because they're just phenomenal lyrics. But it kind of reminds me of what Bruce is talking about with his story. And part of the song says, I'm not yet where I'm going, but I'm a long way from where I was.
Hallelujah.
And another line of the song says,
that.
Another line says, I hear a choir of angels cheering me on. And we ain't even talking about it right now. It's just that line in itself. Like whenever you're going through something, I'm a very visual person. So just picturing a whole choir of angels and the sound that must sound like with all of them cheering for you is just I just encourage people to try to picture that choir of angels cheering for you when you feel like no one's listening.
Or you're watching Creed or Rocky, right? And the guy's on the canvas, you're like, get up. Hey, can you indulge me a little bit? Can we go to, I don't know if you got scriptures handy, but when you're talking about just being real in that worship and why are we here, I just love what the Savior taught in Luke chapter 18. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I'm not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner.
I love that.
I love that, right? When I'm not 100% there, right? I would love any given Sunday, someone asks me, why am I here? Because that, right? I'm looking for some reconciliation. I'm looking for some healing. I'm looking for some justification through the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I'm not here because my wife made me. I'm not here because there's no good football games on right now, right? Like, and I'm not 100% there. There's some days where it's like, I'm here out of duty.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's some days I'm here because I need nurturing by the good word. There's some days I'm here because my friends are here, right? Yeah. In the end, he'll take it. He'll work with it. But man, how great would it be if we were just all like that? Not getting brownie points, right? Not chewing up little points like Pac-Man doing, right? Doing good deeds, but doing work, right?
We were
doing
actually
the healing work.
Sorry, a couple days ago, we were just talking about there was an activity once I did at church where I passed out a bunch of note cards and had people write down what they loved about church, and I collected them. And just the other night, we were talking about doing something similar, but asking people like what they were struggling with, what was really heavy on their hearts, and like, or a battle they were going through, something like that, just to be vulnerable.
Anonymously.
Yes, anonymously.
Right.
And I was like, how cool would it be if we like gathered those thoughts from our own church family members and made them into some kind of an art piece or something to hang on a wall. So when people walked by, they remembered like, wow, someone in my church family is
right now.
And it kind of makes it like, whenever you see it, it's a reality of like, I have to remember these are the people that I'm talking with, and they may not tell you they're going through it, but if it's anonymous and on the wall, I feel like just kind of to think of those types of things, like what they're going through.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful idea that we should definitely do. You did the first one, but as far as people writing down anonymously what they're going through currently, and like you mentioned, Tyler, why are you here? You know, what is it that you need, or what are you seeking? Of course, a relationship with Christ, but beyond that, what do you need? But piggybacking off of that, you know, and being open and honest at church. When I first became a Christian, honestly, for the first probably 3 years, I was like, I can never talk about my past history, my before Christ history. I said, there's no way they would let me in the building. You know, I said, I was terrified. I was horrified to even mention that, because when I walked in, it appeared that everybody had it together. But I was also naive and gullible, thinking that everyone was just going to be in there, you know, praising them and raising their hands up and just couldn't wait to go to heaven. And I was sadly disappointed when I was, you know, greeted with like, oh my goodness, like, why aren't we just shouting and praising and rejoicing? You know, it's like we're one day closer to going to heaven. Like, hallelujah, you know, let's raise some hallelujahs in here. But on top of that, though, I was listening
We need to do some hallelujahs, Tyler.
Yeah. Amen.
I was listening to a gentleman's testimony, and he had been in the prison system for many, many years, and he had committed some, you know, crimes. And one thing that's beautiful just about sin in general, that sounds like an oxymoron, but, you know, one sin is not greater than another. It's all the same. You commit one, you've committed them all, right? So sometimes in society we have this, it's kind of a problem of putting certain sins above other ones. And, you know, in God's eyes, one sin, it doesn't matter.
Separation. It's all separation.
Exactly. But I felt rebuked. I was listening to his story, and he got out of prison, and he just started sharing his testimony. He was converted when he was in prison. Hallelujah for that. But he started going around and just telling his story. And when I heard this, And he said the words, it's not my story, it's God's story. And when I heard him say that, I said, woe is me. I cannot believe that I have not been sharing my experience, because ultimately, just like Revelation 12:17 says, and they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. The beautiful thing about that is that when you share your testimony with somebody, they can't argue with you, because it's your experience. It's what God has personally done in your life and what he is doing. So we all know that you can sit back and you can argue about doctrine until you're blue in the face. But we're all redeemed by the blood of God, by the blood of Jesus Christ. Hallelujah to that. And when we share our testimony, it just helps not only yourself, but many, many other people who might be on the same path or one similar to yours. So after I heard that, I felt rebuked in my heart. And that's when I've really been sharing ever since. I got started involved in a ministry that's very special to me, and it's Coming Out Ministries. And mainly, it's focused on coming out of sexual sins, but really coming out of any kind of sin that you're entangled with. So that was one that I got involved with, pretty early on in my Christian walk, and, one that Alex and I have the blessing and, benefit of being a part of now, and doing a little bit of speaking. But I was just kind of going off of what you were mentioning, writing down what people are struggling with and why they're there, and sharing your testimony and why it's so important, because your story could be the key that unlocks somebody else's, road to Christ, or could start their journey. We won't know until you get to the kingdom one day, and we'll definitely be raising hallelujahs up there. But, there's definitely a beauty in that.
Well, and I think when you look at the scriptures, how many times was somebody healed or forgiven, right? And then there'll be a little line, there'll be the story, and then a little line, and they praise Jesus the rest of their life, everywhere they went, they told their story.
Yeah.
And I think Tyler and I are always it's so important, like the spiritual battle that we're trying to win. And we will. That verse in Revelations it gives us the hope that we will overcome. But that idea of remembering versus forgetting, so 6 years, that sounds pretty fresh, Bruce.
Yes.
When you're 90, right? What's the secret? What's the secret to remembering always that none of this is you?
Well, Paul writes, he talks about the thorn in the flesh, he prayed that God would take it away. And God says, no, my grace is sufficient for you, right? For my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And that was always a verse that really kind of tripped me up, because, here Paul is pouring out his heart, Lord, just take it away. And he's like, no, my grace is enough. And so I don't know if everyone, but I believe that everybody has something in their life going on that kind of keeps them on their knees and coming to God. And God's like, no, I'm not going to take that away, because if I took that away, if you could see the end from the beginning or beginning from the end, then it wouldn't keep you coming back and seeking me on a continual basis. And that's been my experience since I've been a Christian. There's been those hills and valleys I spoke of, and there's some things in my life that's still a thorn in my flesh. And I still expect when I'm 90 years old, if by God's grace, I make it to 90, I still think I'm going to be on my knees. I don't think there's, certain things he did take away, all the addictions of drugs and alcohol. I was a terrible alcoholic and a terrible drug user for many years. And that was something he took away immediately, which is a miracle in itself. But there's other struggles that I have still that he didn't take away. And I've come to find, in 6 years, it's really not a long time, especially when you compare it to eternity. It's just a drop in the bucket. But there's been an absolute beauty in the journey, because I realize that now, okay, God, I do think about the bigger picture. I think that's only by his grace that I'm able to sit back and say, okay, if I didn't still have this struggle, it doesn't mean that you have to give into it, right? Because temptation is not sin, because Christ was tempted in every area as we were, but with no sin, he never gave in. And so as we study the pattern man, which is Christ himself, the beautiful thing about Christ is that he had such a strong vertical connection with God the Father that he was really never enticed to sin. Yes, he was tempted, but he never gave in because his mind was so set on serving other people, and he was so focused on his mission, which honestly is our mission, right? The Great Commission. Go tell the world about me, right? Go spread the good news. Go tell people the good news and what I've done in your life.
There's a song called The Commission that I'll plug in too, because it has really good lyrics. It's by Kane.
You're gonna do our soundtrack for this.
I
this
know.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
But to really answer your question, Mike, I think it's just the thorn in the flesh, and I believe that everyone has something that keeps them on their knees, and some God might take away, but I think for most it's going to keep people on their knees until maybe even the final day. I mean, look at the thief on the cross. I love the story of the thief on the cross because clearly he's next to Jesus. He was a condemned criminal, just like we are, right? Now, Christ died, we're set free. Hallelujah. But, he wasn't living the Christian life all the way up until that point. But yet, grace. Yeah, grace. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing grace, isn't it?
Man, our good friend Stephen Mitchell, friend of the program, been on. He shared with me a sermon by Alistair Begg on the thief on the cross. And Alistair Begg, in this sermon, he paraphrases and kind of takes some liberty with what happens when the thief dies. And the thief dies and he goes to heaven, and they're like, we don't have you on the rolls, right? And he's like, it's like, well, I'm supposed to be here. And he's like, well, how do you know you're supposed to be here? And he says, the man on the middle cross said I can be here.
Ooh. Oh, I love that.
Right? It's like,
invite.
Yeah, done. You're in. I love it.
I think it's important too to keep sharing what's happened to you, like what God's done in your life, because for us, like what God has done for us in the last 2-3 years of our marriage is incredible. And it's almost like you can't not talk about it. So I feel like it's really important for people to know, like, don't stop sharing what God's done, because at least I will never forget the situation that we've gone through. And the more we talk about it, the more it reminds me that I'm not going to forget.
Okay. Well, I feel like there are a couple of hours with Bruce's story, but Alex, you're here floating through life. You're having this situation, and Bruce comes into your life. Does he come in BC or AC?
AC.
Okay, he comes in AC.
Telling me all about BC.
Oh, okay. How does that land with Alex when Bruce comes and says, let me open up my black box here and tell you what Christ has done for me?
So yeah, I will try to make this quick. Like Bruce said, we met online. He was not on my radar because it's a little funny because he was, quote unquote, too old for me. So I didn't see him on my list.
You gotta be easy on those filters.
Yeah.
Squeak through, man.
So when his profile pops up, I'm like, oh man, this guy seems really happy. He's an attractive guy, and I wanted to learn more. So when we first started talking, we instantly connected. Like, I think we talked a little bit through text or messaging. And then the first phone call we had, I remember it was at my friend's house when I was talking to him. I remember walking back inside and I told her, like, oh my gosh, like I could marry this guy. And just based off that first conversation, because we had such a connection.
That's crazy stuff that they say on The Bachelor. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Tyler doesn't watch that because he doesn't get pedicures.
I don't watch The Bachelor.
Did you see it was like looking down and just like,
I was almost rescinding my invite to Hotel Gould, man.
I thought he was booking his pedicure, but I guess I'm wrong.
This guy, he looks down at me. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So after that first phone call, I was like, well, goodness, like I got to keep talking to this guy. And then in comes the second phone call. And that is where he told me everything about his past. And being the way I was raised, it hit me hard. I was already devastated because I was like, my hopes were already up about this guy that I just talked to once. And when he told me all the trauma he went through and some of the things that he had done and experienced, all those things, I was like, oh my gosh, it was heavy.
Well, you can only imagine. I mean, I was in the LGBT community for 13 years. So here I am meeting this Christian girl, and I'm like, yeah, by the way, I've been saved by the grace of God, and I lived a completely different lifestyle. You want to date? You want to go out? I'm looking for a wife now.
Yeah.
And
and even some more background, like I was dating myself for marriage. I had never lived with a guy before. I'd only dated a couple guys, one in high school, one in college. Like it was completely out of my world. So when he told me all that stuff, it hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know who to talk to about it. So I eventually told my friend who had helped me find him online and was kind of my support throughout that time. And I kind of told her, like, this is what he's gone through. Like, what should I do? Because I didn't know what to do. I was so torn. And I remember I messaged him back and essentially just said, I need a few days. Like, I cannot make this decision right now. And I prayed on it. I thought on it. I was like, God, like, please just tell me what to do. And overwhelmingly so, God's like, go for it. Like, don't be afraid. And I was like, okay. I trust you. I'm going to go for it. Cause I'm also a very sensitive person, and I could probably get heartbroken easily. So it was self-protection in that part too. And oh, goodness gracious. It's been, it's been a roller coaster ever since then, but a blessing of one too.
There's so much really to unpack here, to be honest, because there's so much of my history and then leading up to how we met, and then what that's been like, what that looked like. And I think for the sake of time, it's hard to kind of, because you want to elaborate and kind of get those details, but for the sake of time, you kind of have to just do a little flyover. And
I just love the faith that your story, Alex, just required, right?
Yeah.
Like, because
Multiple.
one thing is Bruce is on his faith journey, but do you accept that Jesus has done what Bruce is claiming he's done?
Yeah, it was. Well, thankfully, as Mike, I got working, my job right now, working with adverse childhood experiences and childhood trauma. And I got that job not even a year before I met Bruce. And I don't take that lightly. I feel like God placed me there intentionally. Yes, I went to school for public health, but not for anything like this. It was more the health and fitness world. So I was like, why am I doing this job about trauma? Like, I'm not a social worker, but I went with it. And now that it's been, almost 5 years or so, I'm realizing now why God put me in that job, because I had at least some understanding of resilience and how people could come through on the other side. And I just never really doubted faith and how much God can do. And the fact when he said, God's got me through this, I was like, I trust you, because that's something I take seriously. But it was one of a couple really hard things that I really had to let God take over. And I don't even know if I should open up this can of worms right now or not, but the other one was when on our second wedding anniversary, to the day, I found out a little bit later on, but Bruce had actually called a divorce lawyer. And because we had been going through a rocky patch for, I don't know, like 9 months or something, where it was just like unsettled. And we finally got to that true, just like breaking point where I was like, he could leave me at any day, any point. And I had to literally get on my knees, listen to that song, God Will Work It Out, and just like cry worship and be like, I've got to just trust that it's going to be fine. And I really did deep down trust that it was all going to work out. We were going to stay married. And I tried not to get stressed about it, even though he argued with me. Like, no, like,
well, yeah, I mean, she's right. I'm an avoidant. And so I just run. I was just going to run. I did that once, whenever we were dating, and I transferred to Sacramento, and we were trying to see how the relationship would be. But again, coming up on the weekends for a day and a half, not even really 2 days, it just wasn't enough time. And, living at different Airbnbs when I was down there in Sac, it was too soon. It was too much too soon to be pulled away from everything that was familiar with my Christian walk, because my life did the total 180 when I lived in Chicago. And I'll definitely have to tell that story another time. But when I moved back to Texas, and then quickly moved out to, it was a couple of years, but moved out to Sacramento, I didn't realize the turmoil that I was going to encounter when I was living there in Sacramento. And then I think we were both a little bit naive and gullible in a sense.
It's that challenge of, we knew we had a connection. We've always been really, really good friends and loved being around each other. So when we had that fighting against the practicalness of, like Bruce said, we didn't really start dating till after we got married. It was like, you don't want to wait, because you're you're in love, but then you're also not the right timing. So it's like, how do you figure that out?
Well, and keep in mind, like I mentioned, here Alex is, she was saving herself for, her husband. She's been a Christian her entire life. Well, here comes this guy, myself, and I was only in one relationship with a woman when I was 16 and 17, trying to take away everything that, all these feelings I was struggling with, growing up due to everything that had taken place when I was a kid. So here Alex is, she has a pure upbringing, right? I mean, not perfect, nothing's perfect, but Christian upbringing. She's saving herself for her husband, looking for like kind of that perfect kind of match. And then here comes this guy who's got so much baggage. And, I'm not familiar with, with women's emotions and really how to navigate through that. And so we're both trying to kind of meet each other, but it's kind of like,
it was clunky.
It was messy. It was messy. And
so guys, I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting here listening to this story and I'm putting myself in Alex's parents' shoes.
Oh man.
Right. Cause I got a daughter who's in college right now. Tyler's got a couple daughters in college right now. We are staring in the next couple of years at somebody coming, courting, asking my hand, or, asking for my daughter's hand and my blessing. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, what that must.
Yeah, right. It is a little, it's a little bit real, right? But I think I love this conversation though, because I'm curious. What I want to hear is that process that you guys went through, right? Because relationships are hard in the best of circumstances, right? It takes a lot of work. And so here you guys are, you've had, Bruce is coming in with his baggage. You've got sort of your expectations, right? Mm-hmm. And then, so how do we connect these two things and say that we've got to a place now? Because you said the first couple of years were tough. It was clunky. It was kind of, well,
and Tyler, it sounds like it's hanging by a thread.
Yeah. And
I mean, it sounds like at one point, Bruce's bags might be packed, ready to run, and he's got a business card of an attorney.
Yeah. But here's the beautiful this is what I because I think, again, there's people that are listening that will listen to this podcast that maybe their life experiences are not matching up perfectly with what your life experiences are, but they're in a relationship and it's tough and it's hard. And I think there is an instinct. Mike and I talked about this the other day, just about this. Are we fight or are we flight? Right? Do I play dead like a bear's attacking me, or do I get up and face it head on? And, I think that depending on the circumstances, there's people that find themselves in a situation. I'm one of them at times where I say, I'm out of here, man. Right. I'm out of here. I can't face this thing. So I would love for you guys to kind of elaborate on how those connections grew together, where you're in a place where you can say, hey, we can overcome some of these challenges.
Man, where are you going to start?
I know.
With the disclaimer that you're in this journey still, right?
And everybody is, right? Alex, you said your parents have been married for 35 years?
Yeah, 35.
Okay, 35 years. I guarantee they're still having conversations that are like they're working stuff out, right? I mean, that's if we weren't, we're probably our heads are in the same.
Conversations about our marriage, probably.
Probably. I have a lot of conversations about my daughter's dating lives right now. So yeah,
walk us through that process.
Yeah.
I will have to touch on the point at some point about my parents with our marriage too, because that was definitely a strength builder for them and for us too. But yeah, I mean, walking through something I remember saying, which it sounded hurtful as I was saying it, because I try to be careful with my words. But there was one point where we're just standing in the kitchen and we were talking about essentially just separating and just not being married anymore, and some of his concerns and things that he was struggling with. And I remember saying, like, we're really going to let the devil win and not do what God has designed for us. And I didn't want to make him feel guilty. Like, I'm going to guilt you into, like, with your faith, make you think that you have to stay with me. But I had such, I've been praying for him for years, before I even knew him. So I had this like dedication I felt to God to fulfill what he brought together. And I, take marriage very seriously. And so I said that, just kind of reminding him, like, God designed this marriage for us. He has a purpose for it. And I don't want to, selfishly, I don't want to miss out on what he has planned for us because of a current struggle that we might be having. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
Oh, no, I'm listening.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'll wait till you're done.
Okay.
You know.
So I kind of threw that out there. Like,
I don't want to miss out on what he has designed. I love that.
Yeah, because I had, again, been praying for him. I knew I was going to find somebody of faith. And I was, when I first heard Bruce's story, to go back a little bit, I wasn't as scared or hesitant as I thought I would be. Even my mom had said, like, I'm kind of shocked that you were okay with some of the stuff that he went through and brought into the marriage. And I was, me too. I'm just as shocked as anybody because, even small things like he has tattoos. Never thought I'd be with somebody with tattoos, and some of these smaller things that, like, I'm a very sheltered person. That's how I was raised. So when he brought this big stuff into my world, I was surprised at how peaceful I really was about it. And I think that was God just being like, you prayed for this guy. Here he is. Yeah. Don't stress anymore. And I probably sound like a cuckoo person because there were times that I literally just went back to that thought. God brought him into my life. There's a reason for it. This temporary stuff is just that, it's temporary, and tried not to stress too much.
Calm and peace are good indicators, right?
Yeah.
Good indicators.
Yeah. I didn't realize, I realize it now. Thankfully, I'm still here. But God really did place me in the perfect situation with Alex, and how loving and accepting she was, and her family, and how warm and accepting they were, and they still are towards me, because I came in really strong with her family, really strong. And but a lot of it, I think probably sometimes with marriages, at least for myself, I thought that I had to have it all figured out when I got married. But like I mentioned, that's when it was really just beginning. And I'd gone through my entire life almost kind of like this facade, because, having these attractions I had growing up, due to the abuse that took place, I was always trying to convince men and women that I was manly. I was always trying to portray that I was something that I was always just being somebody who I wasn't. And I realized when we got married that I was doing the same thing. God had to humble me in our marriage. Like, I had to have humility and humbleness, and I had to be vulnerable, because I think a lot of the times things don't get talked about because you're afraid that your spouse might find something out that they might not like about you. Right. Yeah, I think pride definitely does creep in, and pride's such an ugly thing. And I think that's why God hates it so much. I mean, look what it did to Lucifer, who's now Satan. But yeah, I had a lot of pride and a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear that, oh man, if I let her know that I'm still struggling with some of these things, because she's under the impression that God took every single thing away from me. But hold up, there's still some struggles that I'm having. And it was really impacting every category of our marriage. So, instead of having the mindset of like, I need to just stay in this situation and just kind of be still, I was just trying to run. I wasn't running to God, even though I still had the relationship, but I was finding that I was running more to the world and just getting involved in, sports again, and just watching it and gambling. And I was starting to kind of fall back into this whole, kind of pre-BC life, because when you've lived that certain lifestyle for 30 years, well, you haven't been a Christian for, nearly that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so the carnal nature starts to kind of rear its ugly head, and it starts to kind of, you feed it a little bit, and before you know it, you kind of start backsliding, and you're not really working on your marriage. You kind of start reflecting inwardly, right? You start looking at yourself. And that is the biggest mistake I think that humans can make, when you start looking at yourself, because it really is just kind of this vortex. It goes round and round and round. You start to become really down on yourself. And, how can you can't give what you don't have. And so Alex is going through struggles. She's seeing me go through these struggles. I'm feeling like I've opened up Pandora's box and I can't seem to shut it. And the only logical thing that my feeble mind is thinking is that I've got to run home. I've got to run home and touch home base. That'll make everything better. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the answer. But that wasn't the answer. It wasn't the answer because, yeah, it took really hard conversations, really tearful situations. Like, I'm leaving. And I did leave once. I did return to Texas, when I did transfer the first time up to Sacramento. I got completely overwhelmed. I didn't know up from down. I said, I'm gonna just drive off a cliff if I stay here, because I felt I was just really depressed. I was really just lost. I was lost, and I wanted to fall back into those old habits. I wanted just to go and do whatever I could to get my mind off of it, whether that was drinking, whether that was drugs, whatever the case was. And some of the people I was staying with down in Sacramento, they were having parties at their house, and here I am in the bedroom by myself trying to be a saint. I'm trying to say no to the bottle. I'm trying to say no to drugs, but I smell it. I see it, and I'm like, oh man, this life is just trying to call me back. And poor Alex, her and her family are away on a trip, for 2.5 weeks
in Israel, of all places.
They get back. Yeah, right. They get back, and in that time that they were gone on the trip, I made the decision I've got to go back to Texas. And it really broke my heart, because here I come back up on that weekend, and she gives me all these gifts that she gave me when she was in Israel. And I'm thinking, oh no, like I'm about to break this girl's heart, And now we weren't married.
The juxtaposition though of you going through your own personal hell and she's in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
With her family.
That's a great point. Yeah.
That's the irony.
I think something that was another challenge for us during that time was, I was raised, I never doubted I was loved and valued and one of a kind and so special and just designed intentionally and had a purpose in this world. And something that was a struggle for us in our marriage was I told Bruce all the time how much I loved him and how great he was, and not in like a we're better than other people type of a way, but like, you're a special person. Like God created you for a reason. And that was hard for him. That was really hard for him to take. And for me, on the flip side, you can't say too many nice things to me, because it just warms my heart with all those words of affirmation. So that was a struggle for us, because I don't think he really believed how unconditionally I loved him through all of it. And that's really what kept me so between my faith and my just super strong love for him and who God created him to be.
And maybe that can be hard to hear when you don't love yourself 100%, right? When someone's telling you like, man, you're amazing, and inwardly your inward dialogue is,
what you're up to.
You're really screwing this up and you're a mess.
Yeah.
It's hard to Yeah,
sorry. I think sometimes he did say certain things, probably hoping that I would want him to leave.
I did. How many times did I tell you, do yourself a favor, Alex, and turn around and run as far away from me as you can? I said, because I am just, I'm destructive. I said, I am just waiting to implode, because I felt that going on in my heart, and I would like to say that I was in the bedroom on my knees, just praying and crying it out. But ultimately I wasn't. I was turning back to all the worldly stuff that I was doing before, because I was letting the carnal man feed. And the cliche saying, whichever, man you feed is the one that's going to grow. So if you feed the spiritual man, that's the one that's going to grow. And if you feed the carnal man, that's the one that's going to grow. And I had the devil in my ear saying, you've gone too far. God can't take you back. And
what do we reach for when we're hurting? Right? Like that's a huge test. And you've got brain wiring you're up against. You've got habit. You've got addiction you're up against. Right? Like I know Luke 1:37 is true. Like I know that with God nothing's impossible. Yeah. But at the same time, I also know that I'm not a finished product yet.
Amen.
Right? Like it's a process that we're in with hills and valleys. And if you can go lower than a valley, like Death Valley, right? And if you can go to the highest extremes and mountaintops, we've all been there. Yeah. But man, like my dream, I want to be chainless.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be yeah, I want to be free forever. I want to be chainless, and I want those old things gone. And that's the work.
Hey, yeah, 2 Corinthians 5:17. It says, if any man therefore is in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. I love that verse because that's the gospel in itself, right? The old man dies, the new man is born. God says, I'm going to do the new covenant. I'm going to put my spirit within you. I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to remove that, heart of stone, that sinful, loving heart, and I'm going to put my spirit and my nature in you. And I just love that so much.
But here we are in a fallen world with a tempter or a couple 100,000, like whatever, influence and media in the world and technology and, and that's the struggle.
And that's why the verse, be still and know that I am God is so important, because if you're not taking that time, you could do it once a week, but honestly, daily. Yeah, and I think it's you have to do kind of self-inventory on a regular basis. You do have to really ask God, where am I at? I want, if you don't, when Christ says, the Sermon on the Mount, I love it. Matthew 5, 6, and 7. I mean, that's really redemption in, the entire Bible, just in those 3 chapters. And,
by the way, Chosen season 3 hits theaters tomorrow.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So no one's going to see you this weekend then, huh? You guys binge watching it all?
I'm trying to talk Kelly. There's no tickets available here. And I think they've actually expanded some show times, but we were looking at like a 10 o'clock time. If I can test negative, that is, of course.
Yeah.
Couldn't go COVID positive into a theater. That'd be terrible, Tyler.
So you can go to the, Hotel Tyler, next week.
I was wondering why you had to miss the meeting on Monday. I was like, man, he can't come and bump.
We test at the door, man. I'm packing. He might be there. He might be at that meeting. I don't know.
Tyler, how, if Mike is able to come, how much would it cost? How much would Mike have to pay you to go get a pedicure?
Ooh, we could double date, Tyler. Double date pedicure.
Tyler.
You know what? I gotta be honest with you. I could be talking to a lot of things, man. I don't know. I got lines in the sand. I cross them all the time.
I do love something you guys were talking about, just that self. And I remember Tyler being up on a chalkboard talking to kids at church, and I drew the word sin, and I said, what's in the middle? What's always in the middle of sin? And they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I just took a piece of chalk and underlined the letter I, right? And it was like, I is always in the middle of sin. When we say, forget what God wants, I'm going to get what I want. You're in trouble every time.
And that, yes, you're right. And when you're struggling with something, if you sit back and keep dwelling upon what you're struggling and you just think about it, and keep, reliving it in a sense, then you're not, because you have the eye problem. And so it's not until you surrender and you're like, okay, Lord, clearly I can't do this. I'm going to need you to do, show up in a big way. And he never fails.
And I think it's even harder when I kind of going back a little bit, when, Satan really does try to make you feel like you're alone. And if you're already feeling like you're struggling with a sin or struggling with a situation,
but I opened the door. So here Alex is, we're having marriage issues. And she's relying on her Christian music. Well, what am I doing? I've gone back to the most satanic music you can listen to, because that was my BC days. I listened to some pretty dark stuff, and I was allowing myself to listen to that again, which was essentially opening the door up for
like a dog to the vomit, right?
That's exactly correct, Mike. That's exactly what I was doing.
And I could tell the difference. I could tell when he came home from the gym. I was like, I know what music he was listening to. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, God's like, oh man, I can work with this, but you've got to just shut that out, And, I finally, of course, had to just let it go, and just start listening to the Christian music, getting on my knees again and praying. But, I've always taken the promises of God literally, right? They're there for us to take literally. And, you know, when Christ says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, I'm like, man, well, what is that? What is that? What does that look like? What does that mean? I want that hunger. And so I started to pray. I'm like, Lord, I want that hunger in my heart. Put that hunger in my heart. You know, what does it mean to be pure in heart? I want a pure heart, you know. I want a noble character. I want what you said is possible for us to have. Yeah. And, you know, by the grace of God, you know, he has really been working on me. Really over this past year has been, it's been difficult, but it's been beautiful. I mean, story of redemption has been all in our marriage this past year for sure. You know, because on our 2-year anniversary, I literally called up and made an appointment with the divorce attorney. And honestly, when we first got married, we went and bought a house, and I wanted no part of buying a house. I did not want to do it. And
I didn't know that at the time. Not that I wasn't necessarily listening to him. Maybe he did say, and I was so excited. But I really had no idea. But again, I was in the first year of our marriage. I was just in bliss. He told me a lot of that stuff in the beginning, but more came out after we were married. I think because you're in close quarters, you're living together, you're in the same bed at night. So things came out that I was like, wait, what? Especially when we're very communicative with each other. So laying in bed at night, all the lights off, that's where a lot of our vulnerabilities came out. So that's one advice I would give any couple, but just really talk things out. If you need to turn the lights off and not look at each other to be in order to be vulnerable, that's a piece of advice I would give, because that's where a lot of stuff came out that I would just literally just lay in bed just crying, because I didn't want him to know it was hurting me, because I was so thankful he was telling me, but I had to let it out. And it was like, okay, like try not to sniffle. I don't want him to know, but it was so impactful. I guess I would give a couple other pieces of advice if I could to other people going through this kind of stuff. I would say what has worked for us is praying together every night. It's not always easy, and sometimes we skip it and do our own prayers, but praying together, it really opens up your heart to your spouse. And going on walks without your phones. Those have been 2 things that I feel like if I could narrow it down, because like Bruce said, we're in nature. Again, you're not looking at each other necessarily, but you're walking and you're talking and you're getting out of your head, out of the world, the media, and just being together and talking, being where you are.
We're not talking rocket science, right? Like some of these answers, some of these hacks, some of these things that truly have redeemed your marriage we're not talking about big, scary things.
Yeah. But it's interesting that Bruce, you mentioned this earlier. You said, get out in nature, don't have distractions, and distractions are the thing that just, right. Yeah. Whatever that is. I mean, it's, if it's a phone, if it's old habits, if it's, whatever it is, right? Those distractions.
What are we losing, right? It's like we're all carrying around in our pocket this virtual bowl of pottage, right? Yeah. We're selling birthright. We're casting aside eternal identity. We're casting aside Christ's love, and the crazy thing is this: Satan can throw anything, like anything, as long as it's not Christ, as long as it's not his doctrine, his gospel, anything in it taken to extreme and excess works.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like he's got an incredible business plan with a playbook that's versatile, and Christ has a straight and narrow path.
Oh, amen. Yeah. And he's the same, yesterday, today, and forevermore. He doesn't change, and that's the beauty. There's structure there. There's the blueprint, right? He gives you the blueprint of how you can live your best life. And I tell you,
that word surrender, I love, Bruce, when you shared that word, like that idea of, it's funny, Alex, that you talk about growing up and kind of floating through childhood, and that your faith deepened when you hit this patch of your life. But we're told to have the faith of a child, right? We're told to be we're taught to be childlike. And
I must admit too, I felt a little bit almost, when I was having such strong faith and belief in our marriage, I almost felt a little bit silly, because I'm very close with my parents. and love them dearly. And they've done so much for me, and I consider them friends as well as parents. They, along with Bruce, when we were going through the marriage stuff, weren't totally on the same page as me. And that was really difficult because I've never really I'm not a rebellious person by nature. I've never gone against my parents in certain things like that. And when I was really wanting to hold tight to my marriage and keep trying and work for it, I was kind of fighting Bruce on it for obvious reasons. He was struggling with stuff, and he's a runner. And with my parents, they were kind of on his side of it, saying, maybe you guys should just just separate. You don't have kids, just, it may not work. Maybe it's not what God wanted. Maybe we pushed it, all these kinds of things. And it was so hard for me because I'm sitting there feeling like the major black sheep, like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one who feels like we should do this. So you start feeling like you're going crazy and that you're wrong. And do you say something? No.
Well,
okay.
Okay.
There's one more thing. I remember, I love going to the YMCA, and there's a teacher there that I just adore. And she's really become a really good friend to me. She was, of all my church people, again, I love my church family. I love my parents. I love the people that have been supporting me. But this instructor at the gym, she was the only person who said, you got to keep fighting for this marriage. I see you guys staying together. I see it working out. God's brought you together for a reason. And I don't know that the people at my church, my parents, weren't hoping that would happen, but she was the only one that said it out loud.
Explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I told her that, and she was like, I actually texted her that. She was like, oh my gosh, like it brings tears to my eyes, because she didn't realize how much I just needed someone to say, you keep trying, because no one, all the people that I normally go to who I thought would tell me to keep trying weren't. And that was where I was like, it really showed me that I need to rely fully on God and what he's telling me. And not that people can't give you great advice and be mentors to you, but at that moment, I needed to really follow that Holy Spirit telling me what to do, because Satan was trying all routes to get me to not do that. And
that's fascinating.
He didn't win.
Yeah.
So take that.
That's fascinating. It's like reverse. Well, it's these hinge moments that we're always talking about, Tyler, but it's like, the YMCA instructor is feeling inspired to give you words that help you fight to save your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, yeah. I love that, and I think if I was watching the movie, right, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Bruce has a business card of an attorney. Like, this thing is like, in Choir of Angels, like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, on the edge of the seat kind of stuff. It's a remarkable story.
A couple important things is that, I think there's some listeners out there. One thing that was really hard for me is, of course, marriage in itself, and then my past history, and, being married and having emotions I'm not familiar with. That all was part of it. But when I became a Christian, people have different convictions, and that's okay. People are going to be convicted about certain things that others might not be convicted about. So when I was a Christian, I knew how I don't want to say how I Christianed, but, I kind of had they're not really traditions, but when I would do devotions, and when I would read, and when my prayer time was, and, when I go to church, and what I did after, right? And I was so convinced when we got married, I would always make the comment, I know how to Christian myself, but I don't know how to Christian being married. I don't know how to make that practical with each other, because,
how do you stick with what you need in your relationship with God while caring about someone else's needs?
Yeah.
That you don't want to give up, but you kind of have to. And
so I really allowed those negative thoughts to really, really start, causing things to decline, because
derailing your own, right? Derailing your own.
Alex, here she is going around the house saying, well, I know God brought us together. And I'm like, did he? Because I think Satan brought us together.
He said that.
He
literally said that to me.
Such turmoil.
How did that go over?
Yeah, well, by the grace of God, we're here. And I can honestly say, by the grace of God.
And you're agile, you're athletic enough to move and dodge whatever was being thrown at you.
Well, thankfully, she's super sweet, and she's never thrown anything. So that's...
I see that one comment like, Satan's winning. And I kind of did it to get his attention, but I honestly believed it. But sometimes I had to just laugh to myself, when he would say certain things, because I'm like, man, this guy, I knew someday he was going to look back and be like, why did I say that? So I kind of he has to get things out. And it was a good time for me to practice my listening
but there
skills.
was a different spirit working within me, because it's one or the other, if you're not really following God's way, we're in the middle of a great controversy here. And honestly, there's two sides to pick. And no, it's not Democrat or Republican. It's either Christ or really the devil. You're in the middle of it. You have a choice to make. You can either be free in Christ, or you can be a slave to sin. And you can tell yourself that you're happy, but you're not. You can have all the money in the world. In my 20s, I had such good money. I was in sales doing so well. But why was I still miserable? And as I look at celebrities and these people of high status, they do the same foolish stuff that people who have no money do, because they're out there searching for something in the world that the world cannot offer you, right? Jesus even says, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul, right? And if you look at Christ, he had nothing. He relied upon others, for places to stay, for things to eat. He was constantly depending on other people. But bringing it back, I told myself that there's no way that we can be married and be Christian. Now, that is such an oxymoron. That's so silly. And I don't think that moment I really understood God's blessing behind marriage, because you look at men and you look at women, there is so many differences. Oh my goodness, there's so many differences, but there's so many things that complement one and the other. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so, I had to go on my own study, because clearly, of course, I wanted to cherry pick verses out of the Bible to support whatever lifestyle I wanted to live, to support whatever I wanted to do. Whatever I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure there was a verse that I could back it up. I wanted to find the answer so I could justify it in my own, sinful mind. But I knew that God instituted marriage from the very beginning, and I knew it was a beautiful thing. But I'm like, man, God, there's just too many differences. How can this even work? How can this even work? And so
differences between a man and a woman, and then differences with our backgrounds and our lifestyles, like that. We were just
a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But
the cool thing about us Christianing together is once we started talking about why we do some things we do and why we need certain things, we realized we're very similar in our foundation. And it took a while to get to that point, because it's like, oh, I did that because of this. Like, oh, well, I did that because of this. Mm-hmm. And that really helped us realize that we're on fire for God and super passionate. And no matter how we get there, we're both getting there.
Well, we were too busy fighting each other. Mm-hmm. We were just
proving our points all the time.
Bumping heads. Well, this is why I believe that. Why don't you believe that? And then we start picking at each other. Well, you do this. God wouldn't like that. Well, you do this. God wouldn't like that.
It's like sixth graders, right? Your superhero is crushing you right now because you don't know how to control it, but you're both passionate and you have this faith. If you could get in the boat and row in the same direction, you would be unstoppable, right?
Exactly. And I can honestly say now, for the first time, since we've been married, that we're a team. We're an absolute team. We're starting to do some ministry stuff together, which is absolutely amazing. She's the gift from God. She's the bride from my side, right? I think it's amazing. I think it's a beautiful thing. And as God is helping me understand marriage now, why he instituted it, why there are differences between men and women and how well they do actually go together. Yeah. And, the mom and dad playing such a special role in kids' lives. We don't have kids yet, by God's grace, we'll have them someday. But if not, we trust them with that. That's another podcast, another day. But
there's a couple.
Yeah, no kidding. But
well, I'll piggyback off that for 1 minute, because obviously kids are something that I've always wanted in my life. And it's pretty cool how God has guided our lives until this point, because I even told Bruce, I think it was a couple weeks ago, if we would have gotten pregnant when I wanted to, we would not have done this podcast or the speaking thing we have coming up in December, or teaching a Sabbath school. Some of these things that we're getting to do, I feel like God's like, wait a second, I'm not quite ready for that chapter. I'm ready for you guys to do this right now. And I'm really trying to just dwell in these moments that God's giving us to do his work, because our plans are just never as good. So
I just love the story that you guys tell, and of redemption, right? We have personal redemption, and then we have this redemption that comes through the relationship. And I think it's so important for people to be able to hear that one, we can overcome those things that are obstacles for us in our own personal paths, right? But then we can overcome things together as couples, and we can find ourselves in a stronger position if we're willing to put the work in to get ourselves there. I think, for me, and I, I've been married not 35 years, but 25 years. So so I got a little bit of time. But hearing these stories strengthen me, right? Because it is a constant effort, and it's a constant, my wife and I want to grow together moving forward, right? That's the goal. And sometimes we're hitting our stride, and sometimes we're going in opposite directions, right?
Yeah. That's the irony of him telling me to, like, you should just run away from me. I got to get as far as possible, because he is exactly what I needed in my life for my faith to grow. And I know God knew that, because, past relationships, nothing against those people at all. They're great people. They didn't challenge me like Bruce has. Yeah. And I think God knew that, like, this girl, like, oh, there's something deeper in there, but I got to give her someone who's going to help me pull it out. And so he was exactly what I needed. It was the opposite of what maybe Bruce thought I needed.
And I think it's, it's interesting, because there's going to be people that listen to this that are solid as can be, and there's going to be people that are listening to this that are on the brink, right? Mm-hmm. And I think being able to hear you two talk about your story and how this relationship is ultimately, as all of our relationships are, a work in progress, but you guys are modeling that, and I love it. I'm so appreciative of it, man. I can't tell you. I feel like, Mike, we need to book Alex and Bruce for the next 2 weeks, and we
deep wells. And I'm not kidding. I agree 100% with everything Tyler says, but that is fact. I think that you guys bring so much to your own journey and to this story, and I think that, even throwing 2 hours at it, boom, we're out of time. But before we get into that signature question of ours, I just want to throw something out there. One of the things that I am not a perfect person, and to think that Christ has paid for my mistakes, my sins, times anyone and everyone that will ever live, blows my mind. But not only that, I have had my heart broken with actions from others. And so, Bruce, and when I hear your story about growing up, how could you just share and witness how Christ took that anger? Because you were wronged, right? You not only committed and made mistakes, but you had mistakes and sins committed that directly smashed your belief in yourself, your life, your growing up, your right to a childhood, all of those things. Can you talk to me about how Christ fixes that?
Well, it was tough at first, just because, I had so many men who had came and left out of my life, and I always wanted a father so bad. And, there's still a question today of how could somebody actually have their own flesh and blood, but not have a relationship with them, And as I, really read from Genesis to Revelation, and I started to realize, I'm like, wow, this is really God's love letter to his people, to all of his children here on the earth. And, when God says that I'll never leave you or forsake you, right? I'm always with you. You can go, I can't think of the verse right now, but the point is, no matter where you're at, I'm always with you. I mean, that always gave me such peace, knowing that I knew I had a heavenly Father that would never forsake me or leave me. And that's one thing that I still lean on today. But honestly, I've been able to get over the bitterness and the hurt from all of those experiences, because Yeah, I've turned my focus now, of course, on God and coming as close to him as I can, but I just want to make sure it's going to help me be a better father, be a better friend, be a better husband because of all of these, things that have happened in the past. But that's really where I turn all of those negative emotions and feelings that I've had is I just redirect them into
praise, I guess, gratefulness.
Well, it is gratefulness and praise, but I want to make sure that I can be an amazing dad. There's so many examples in the Bible of these amazing fathers and poor ones as well. But I really just draw strength from that, knowing that God will never forsake or leave us, hallelujah for that. And knowing that, when I have kids, that's one way that I can honor my father and my mother, is just simply my heavenly father. And that is to be the best earthly father that I can be and to raise hopefully saints and disciples for God. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I love it.
I might speak a little bit on his behalf too. Bruce is definitely he sees people for their heart and not so much their actions. So some of these situations or people that he's forgiven, it's honestly very inspiring and super heartwarming that he can truly love people and see past the things that they've done to him and still have relationships with them.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. I think it was just a couple of years that my grandmother, God love her, she's super sweet. She's been a super help, but she showed me the obituary of my stepfather, who was the one that abused me when I was a kid, and he had passed away. My first thought was, it wasn't that, oh, good, he's dead. I'm so glad he's dead. It was, I sure hope he found the Lord, and I sure hope that his life turned around, because, you watch TV and you see these people who do these just heinous crimes and have just done some pretty wicked stuff. But the fact that Christ could come to this earth, lay aside his divinity and to become, such a humble, sacrifice for us. I don't know why we can't look at our neighbor or stranger and even homeless people, right? I mean, there's a root. There's something there.
It's like what we say, Mike, with childhood trauma and ACEs. Like, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. And as soon as we start seeing people for their stories, maybe what they've been through, it really does give you more grace for them. Like, oh, that person was really rude. It's like, well, do you have any idea what they're going through? And if you did, would you think they were still rude or just struggling with something? And I think if you essentially go up to every situation and every person, just knowing that they're probably going through something, it really changes how you treat them. And that's how you should see everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our good friend, Michael Berg, unmitigated childhood trauma is a robber of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we know that we believe in the Prince of Hope, right? We believe that when bad things happen, there's an answer, right? When we've made mistakes, when we've had things done to us. What I love about this, Tyler, is it reminds me of my good friend George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life, right? George Bailey's circumstances did not change. When I hear the redemption in your stories, your circumstances didn't change, right? But the focus of George Bailey's life changes. And as we've talked, it's very clear that everybody knows how this is working. We started earlier talking about David, and I love when David says at the end, right when he's facing Goliath, he says, all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel and that the battle is the Lord's, right? Amen. When we stand victorious over some of the things that we've overcome and people know what we've gone through, they'll look at that and think, that's not an Alex and a Bruce thing. There's something more to that. Definitely. And I think I'd like to give that a try. And I love that witness that I get from your guys' story. And thank you for sharing that story. And we're not even close to done. And this and I get bonus points, Tyler, for bringing in a couple of amazing people that could come back and do another 2 hours.
I hope so. Yeah.
For those keeping score, Alex and Bruce are my friends. And they crushed this episode of The Richest Men in Town. They did.
I had my doubts when he said he had some friends. I was like, maybe.
So, hey guys, we end every episode, and we didn't even come close to touching on some of the things that we wanted to touch with you, and we'll bring you back. But right now, as you think about this life and you think about this podcast called The Richest Men in Town, The Richest Women in Town, it comes from that closing scene of It's a Wonderful Life, and it's coming up on the most wonderful time of the year when that movie's available for the whole world to consume. We are huge fans of that. But at the end, the movie ends with a toast to George Bailey. George's life is a wreck, and the toast is to him as the richest man in town. And we love that. We love the irony of that. And we end every episode of this podcast asking our guests. So I'll ask you individually. Alex, what does it mean to you to be the richest woman in town?
Goodness gracious. The first thing that comes to mind is just knowing that I was beautifully made by my creator and that he has a plan for me. Knowing that there's so many people that truly don't know that, and they get lost in this world because they don't know that they were designed for a purpose. And just knowing that, there's a whole bunch of other reasons why I feel like I'm extremely rich and extremely blessed. But that thing just guides my entire life. And honestly, without that knowledge, I don't know who I would be and how lost I would be. So just knowing that I am designed honestly perfectly for how God wanted me to be is the biggest blessing I feel like I could have.
I love that. I love that answer. Okay, Bruce, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
Well, this is just from 1 Peter 2:9, and just a little statement. It says, you can proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And I mean, the fact that I am a child of God now, and to accept Christ as my savior, and I was in such darkness, and Christ is like, I've been here the entire time. Even when you sat back and you said you hated me for many, many years, I was still here. If that's not grace at its finest, I don't know what is. I mean, that is absolutely amazing that I could, wow, I feel rich. I feel absolutely rich. And it's not because of money. It's not because of anything that I own. It's because I've accepted the greatest gift ever given to man, and that is redemption in Christ. So I feel so rich, and I can't wait to elaborate on that.
I love that. I love that answer.
Bruce.
I love
Amen.
that. Right? I love that answer. You know, one of the things I love about these conversations that we have is that you can almost track over a 2-hour period just the miracles, right, that happen in our lives. And I'm grateful to you guys for your willingness to share those miracles with Mike and I tonight. And I'm grateful to Mike for introducing me to the two of you. I really am. It's been so much fun. It's been educational, and it's given me things that I need to think about in my own life. And that's what this little podcast is all about, right? If somehow we can have a conversation, and between the four of us, we can think of some additional ways and things that we can do to become closer to our Heavenly Father. Man, what a great time that we've had. So I appreciate you guys. I'm so grateful for you. 2 hours well spent tonight. You're not off the hook. We're going to do this again. So I love it.
Let's put a pin in it. Let's put a pin in this, but I'm with you.
That's right.
When you see Tyler and I writing stuff down, it's not necessarily what you're saying. It's what is moving in us as you say what you're saying. Yeah. And I'm with Tyler. There's a couple of things that really moved in me tonight as I heard your story. And I think in the end, that's the game, right? The game is that we rub off on each other. The game is that, hey, what do you know? Hey, what do you know about this life thing? What do you know about this marriage thing? What do you know about this faith thing? Because that's what we started this podcast for. Hey, we don't have a freaking clue what we're doing. Let's get some people in here that we think do, and then
learn a thing or two, right?
Yeah.
We
learned a thing or two tonight, and we're not done with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
We can't wait to come back and get more
more glory to God, right?
Well, thank you for your willingness to step out there and share your light with other folks. And I know it's going to do good things. So
thank you so much for having us.
We appreciate
right.
you guys. Have a great night.
No,
We're so
you
grateful
too.
for you.
Likewise. Thanks a lot.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.